We are live.
Grace and peace to everyone. Disciples show tonight on number one hip hop station around American hip hop, whatever you want to call it. Politics or local. That's how I feel about it. It's good to be alive, and I'm real happy because I remember this week. Last month I totally forgot. And to be truthful, to be transparent, I went to the doctor because I was having problems with my memory. He started giving me a pill for memory.
Okay.
So I'm here.
All right. Well, glad to have you here. We've got a pretty good show that's going on tonight. Tonight we have the Disciples, at 6. We have Pam Africa on at 7, and talking about Mumia and political prisoners in the United States. And at 8 o'clock we have DJ Rhino and the State of Hip Hop with special guest Hakim Green. And yes, part of that conversation will be Kanye. So we're gonna have it's gonna be a fun show tonight. It's gonna be a good show tonight. It's gonna be an informative show tonight. And we start off with the Disciples. So Ed, welcome. Welcome, Minister Muhammad. Welcome, Pastor Brian in the Hood Ali.
Welcome. Good to be here. How's everybody?
Brother Ed, Pastor Ali, Brother Jonathan, Brother Zaid, how you feeling, brothers? Good to see you.
All right.
Is Reverend Roundtree on?
Yes,
she's not on yet.
Well, she's not on yet.
Okay, wonderful. Well, again, brothers, it's always a pleasure and an honor to see you. Again, Brother Ed, Brother Jonathan.
Always good seeing you, man.
Brother Zaid. Always beginning in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. I bear witness there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is his messenger. Assalamu alaikum. Again, I'm Brother Abdul Haq Muhammad, the student minister, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for the Muhammad Mosque of Islam, number 25. To all of our brothers and sisters in the listening audience, I'm sure you are familiar with our show, and you are no stranger to myself, as well as everyone else who is with us tonight. But as always, I would like to allow my brother to introduce or reintroduce himself to everyone in the listening audience.
Well, grace and peace be unto you from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. Overseer Brian Ali, Senior Pastor of the New Psalmist Worship Center, located in the city of Newark on Avon and 13th Street. And I go by the AKA Pastor in the Hood, meaning that I'm helping others obtain destiny. So it's good to be alive, good to be well, and good to be back again this month. So peace and love, and God bless.
Yes, sir. I don't know if Reverend Roundtree is on yet, but again, we want to welcome everybody to the Disciples. As always, we are honored to be with you. There's a saying that it's better to be seen and not viewed. And we know that there's many of our brothers and sisters that are being viewed today. Brother Ed, you put on our thread about the passing of the illustrious Calvin Butts, Reverend Butts. We know he was a long-standing soldier in the fight for liberation for our people. We may have not always agreed on the best tactics to get freedom, justice, and liberation, but we know that the principle was to attain that. And our brother was a great fighter, a great warrior. So we want to send our condolences to his family, to all of his supporters, to all of his well-wishers. I never met him personally, but Brother Ed, have you ever met our brother, Pastor Ali?
Yes, sir. He was a comedian. He behind the scenes, he liked to laugh, liked to smile, but he was also serious. And he followed a great legacy over at the Abyssinia Baptist Church in Harlem, New York. He was straight up. He was concerned about our people, but I was blessed to make him smile a couple of times with my ways, and he showed me a balance, which I always respected about him.
Yeah, I've known Reverend Butts perhaps for about 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I was a young man in Harlem. My first wife was from New York. We almost got married at his church. I was 17 years old when I first met him. and and over the years, we would talk every now and then, and you know, um, what can I say, man? He was, we would have arguments about him being a Morehouse man, you know.
Yes, sir.
He would always talk about, that was the greatest college, on the planet Earth, and we'd go back and forth. Uh, and But he was a good brother. One of the reasons I liked him so much was he was real close with the minister, in one of the only churches, in New York, that would readily open up his arms to the minister. And we used to go there all the time, hang out, and I used to spend New Year's with him a lot, you know.
Mm.
And one of the things he used to say, Pastor Ali, he used to always look up, in the balcony, and he would say, "Yeah," he said, "all the hustlers are up there." And he said, "I'm grateful that you all came to church tonight." He said, "Start here." He said, "Make sure y'all leave some of that money before y'all go."
That was
And,
balance. Balance.
yeah, it was always funny on New Year's with him, man, and just really, really a great brother, real smart. A lot of things he did, man, and just like you said, man, a lot. We didn't always agree, but we agreed to disagree.
Right.
And
Sure.
and the thing about Reverend Butts was that, I remember going to his office one time, man, and we were talking about the magazine that I was doing, 30 years ago, and
Mm.
sat down with him and the College Entertainment Review magazine, and he was trying to figure out a way, Ali, that the church could become my partner. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
He was a brilliant brother, and I remember me and Bashir, we were doing when I first met Bashir in college, he hadn't really been to Harlem before. And when I first took him to Harlem as a young man, Bashir was like 19 years old, Zaid. And I took him
Bashir
to
talks about it. He talks about it.
I took him to all of those churches, man.
Mm-hmm.
And he had an opportunity, because I didn't really know my way around the church. I grew up in the Nation of Islam, so I didn't really know my way around. So Bashir would show me how to act in church. But I knew these brothers, man. I knew all of them because from 17 being in New York and being in Harlem, and I can remember, man, visiting Y.T. Walker, Calvin Butts, and all of them brothers, man. And one of the things that I remember is that Calvin Butts was always welcoming to young people into his church, man. And we're gonna miss that, brother. And so I, like you, Brother Hawk, I send my condolences to his family, to his church family, and to all of the brothers and sisters in Harlem who was blessed by that brother being there.
He definitely touched a lot of people. Brother Zaid, any memories as it relates to Brother Calvin Butts? I know you've been around a long time, social scene, political scene, in terms of activism. We know Reverend Butts was a great activist politically and socially. He definitely preached the social gospel. He wasn't one who would just handcuff to being in the church or the pews or the rostrum. He definitely was always out amongst the people, trying to enlighten the masses, whether that was preaching the gospel, whether that was his social activism, his political views. So he's been on the scene for a long time, a great elder, in our community.
Well, let me say several things. First, I want you, and in this circle and in this discussion, to take a moment and take a beat and lift up leadership that the nation just lost. Right, we haven't had you since nation lost Sister Ava Muhammad. Right, and we're not going to let that just slide by. That sister was she was a great story. On top of her being a great presence. So I want to acknowledge that for you, and I want you to have some words to say about that great sister, right? Reverend Butts, oh my God, me and him go back in the awful 80s, right? I came into New York in the mid 80s and hooked up with the Malcolm X grassroots movement under Ahmed Obafemi and Patrice Lumumba Coalition under Lombe Brath, which later morphed into the December 12th movement, just a year or two later. That was the time of Michael Griffin and Howard Beach and Yusuf Hawkins and those that was it was just really a dark moment in the city's history. Ed Koch had lost his mind and had become this belligerent, antisocial, racist when he came in as a smooth liberal, right? And it was this movement that was building up to run him out of Dodge, right? When we initially started rallying during those periods, there were three, we call them the three horses, right? There were three brothers that we were kind of pushing up to be considered for elected leadership. One, well, the warrior lawyer was young Alton Maddox, right?
Mhm.
Then there was C. Vernon Mason, right? And then there was Reverend Calvin Bus. And this was shortly before he became pastor of Abyssinian Baptist Church. He was out there, all of them were out there with us in the streets, shutting streets down, raising hell, giving the police fits, giving the mayor fits, doing all that stuff that we do, right? But he was there in all of that, right? When he decided not to make that move, he stepped back and was ultimately given this very important responsibility of tradition by being made pastor of Abyssinian Baptist Church. And of course, Abyssinian Baptist Church is an important historical landmark and breathing institution in the Black church social justice tradition. It's most famously associated with the great Adam Clayton Powell. But but even before Reverend Powell, Abyssinian Baptist Church had a very important place in the community of Harlem. And as Harlem was prominent, so is those who are prominent in Harlem to the world. So he became a statesman in the church tradition, in the Abyssinian Baptist Church tradition, and made the church accessible to us at very pivotal times also. And in fact, one of the most one of the most cherished moments that we have in a movement way that brother did is that he opened the doors of his church when we needed a space to bring Fidel. We wanted to bring Fidel into Harlem. This is the late 90s. We wanted to bring Fidel in the Harlem, in the tradition, honoring that old meeting from back in 1962 when Malcolm received Fidel in Harlem when everybody else was afraid to, right? To lift that up, Reverend Butts opened his doors to Abyssinian for us to have Fidel in Harlem. And it was an electric night. It was an electric night in Harlem. And Fidel in that uniquely way that Fidel had about mesmerizing the people. You had all these great warriors on in the pulpit of that church, right? It was one incredible night, and then so many of us who are from New York and are part of our movement are Abyssinian Church, regulars, right? An elder who was with me in the Malcolm X Commemoration Committee and who had the task of succeeding Herman Ferguson as our chair, late Manny Gilliard, was a member of Abyssinian Baptist Church. We've gone to weddings and funerals. That was the place for wedding and funerals in Harlem, as Abyssinian is and continues to hold that place. It's going to be interesting to see
who takes over,
who inherits that mantle, right? Because that church is an important place of distinction. He had been, and somebody already acknowledged that he had been cultivating a young generation of associate pastors. So it's going to be interesting to see who steps into that responsibility to honor that tradition.
Yeah, that was Brother Ed talked about that, how he embraced young people.
Yes.
Which is very important. And we know, particularly in our movements, oftentimes we don't cultivate, we don't develop, we don't nurture young people. And, according to Brother Ed, and many of you all would attest, Reverend Brooks was always interested in young people. So he's definitely going to be missed, but we know his legacy will live on, as you shared, Brother Zaid, the great Abyssinian Baptist Church, not just in Harlem, but in the history of Black America in general. We know that church has always been a staple, institution, that it was like an incubator for producing some of our great Black leaders. and Reverend Butt was also in that line of divine. So we're definitely going to miss him in terms of his physical presence, but his legacy in terms of what he brought to the table and what he'll bring to the table through his words, his videos, his message, it'll never die. So we can't spend enough time talking about somebody like Reverend Butts. And I think, it's a disservice in our community in terms of, a lot of times how we look at our elders, how we treat our elders, and the lack of respect that we have for our elders, those that were on the battlefield, those that paved the way, those that, built institutions and who fought very hard to make sure that we as Black people can be heard and be respected. So I think we don't do this enough in terms of showing a great deal of respect for our great leaders and teachers who have worked hard on the battlefield for freedom, justice, and equality. So much to talk about, but we definitely had to stop and talk about, the legacy and the life of Calvin Butts. But, just one more question. I think Brother Ed or Brother Zaid or Pastor Ali, what do you think will be missed the most about someone of Reverend Butts' brilliance, his presence in a place like Harlem, particularly today with all that we see happening in Harlem, New York, Black America in general? What do you think will be missed most about him?
His ability, for me, his ability to shift. He took from Samuel D. Proctor. Before that was Adam Clayton Powell. Before that was Adam's dad. And sort of long history. And when after Proctor passed on and Butts came on, many were wondering how Butts would handle it. But he had an ability to shift, and he was about education. He was a college president, etc. He was about Harlem. Back in the day, about 20 years ago, we had an organization called Blocker, which was Black Leadership AIDS Council, so to speak, on dealing with the epidemic of AIDS at the time. And he was one of the few pastors that opened up Abyssinia, and they came back and forth over to Metropolitan. He spent a lot of time in Metropolitan in Newark with Reverend Jefferson. So he was not only concerned about the educational piece, he was also concerned about the health disparity among people of color. So I think that shift that he took over, Proctor was more of a theologian, a book writer and stuff like that, where Calvin was in your face. He was out there. So I think it's going to be a very interesting shift to see the next young person that took over, because he was young when he took over, and how he shifts that paradigm shift or that dynamic of the Abyssinia Church and its history.
Yes, sir. Brother Ed?
What I would add to that is that, first off, I concur with everything that Brother Ali said. But I think that, two things I want to bring to note. One is when Ali said he spent a lot of time in Jersey with Reverend Jefferson. That's how Jefferson got that job. Jefferson got that job because it was actually Kevin Butts when they were looking for a preacher. He told me himself, Reverend Butts, that he said, I recommended that man there, brother. He said that's how he got to Newark. And I was like, wow, most people didn't even know that. I said, I didn't know that. So that's one. And then two, one of the things I remember, was I remember when they did one of the last big funerals that he did at that church was Gil Noble.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember that, Zaid. That
night. I was there.
Yeah, and he did the Gil Noble. I mean, it was awesome. And all of the the Black leaders and young Black
Minister Farrakhan was there.
Minister Farrakhan was there. It was a very, very powerful evening, brother. And but that's the kind of person he is. So when you talk about what we'll miss, I think one of the things you miss is that you got a lot of cats who want to be preachers and want to walk around with titles and be a preacher and say I'm a reverend or I'm a pastor, and be afraid to engage with people who have some harm for our community. I've never seen that brother be afraid to speak up for Black folks. right? Never seen him do that. And so, and then some of the personal conversations we've had, just on the street, or either at Sylvia's, me and him would talk. And when I was younger, I was into buying Cadillacs, and he would always say, "Man, every time I see you, you got a new Cadillac," but what I'll miss is his everydayness, man. Was just a brother who could walk the streets of Harlem and understood what that meant from a Black perspective.
Wow, that's powerful, brother Ed. Yes, sir. Brother Zaid, I see Reverend Roundtree just joined us. We're talking about the late, great Reverend Calvin Butts, his legacy, what he meant to the community in general, Harlem in specific. He's talking about his legacy, what we'll miss about him. Pastor Ali, Brother Ed shared, Brother Zaid, and then Reverend Roundtree will let you go in terms of what you'll miss as it relates to Reverend Calvin Butts. And again, we know men of this magnitude, the Quran says, nay, you perceive them dead, but they are alive. They are living through their work.
That's right.
All of the things that they did. As you said, Brother Ed, he was never afraid to engage those who sought to bring harm to our community. And he was very active. He was an activist. He believed in not just the gospel of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but he believed in the social gospel, the gospel of hitting the street, hitting the pavement, like many of those that came before him in Abyssinia. That he followed that legacy, that tradition, as you talked about, Brother Zaid, Adam Clayton Powell, all those great men that came through that church. So, Brother Zaid, what is it that you'll miss most? Or you think, and that you'll miss most, and you think that will be missed most from somebody, again, of his brilliance, his political judiciousness, again, because he was very politically aware, politically astute. So, what do you think that'll be missed most?
Well, y'all kind of said it. Each of you kind of said it. I don't have much to add to that. I will say that it should be acknowledged. And he had an ease about him, in the church language, or in elders' language, and in ancestral language. He had a grace about him. He had been in that post for almost 30 years. We was just thinking about it now. We could, if he had not passed today, we think Calvin Butts. We think this Calvin Butts, I saw him a few weeks ago. We wouldn't think of that kind of longevity. He had that kind of breadth in that particular part. That's a heavy post,
right? Very. And in Harlem.
That's right, and he managed it so well. He had that grace. I just said, wow. This is all I could say when I got the word is, he had been on that post that long. He had snuck into us. I didn't realize he was past 7-0. I knew he was a little older than me. I'm like, wow. He just kind of just eased right into it with a manner of grace that you just do not see much in our community anymore. In men and women. Right? And leaders and followers, all of that. Grace is something that is cultivated, and it's one of the anchors of African personality at its best. One of the anchors of African high culture, right? He had that about it, right? And I hope that that gets lifted up, and again, whoever comes behind him, I hope that's noted, because he definitely had it ease about him that I just had to really just process just within these last few minutes, learning upon his passing, and just how do we interpret that? How do we make sense of that as he does his transition to the land of the ancestors? But that's it's something I struggle with my own young ones. I said, you got to learn how to appreciate people who are out here trying to help you. You don't know what to say to somebody that may not know you well, but just trying to just say thank you, damn it.
Right.
Thank you.
We don't see that enough.
Right? It's grace. Grace, gratitude is the gateway to grace is one of my favorite sayings that I try and share on to young people, because that dignity, our dignity matters.
Right, that's right. And he was a man of high
We're
dignity.
beautiful people. We ain't just a pretty people. We're beautiful people.
That's right.
And it's the
And
grace that makes us beautiful.
That's right. And he was using the perfect word. He was a man of great dignity, you know, great esteem.
Don't leave out integrity.
That's right, integrity. So, Reverend Roundtree, your thoughts on the late Reverend Calvin Butts and his legacy and what he, you know, what he means and what he meant to Black people in America, and particularly those in Harlem. And we can't just, you know, gloss over that not only was he laboring, but he was laboring in Harlem.
That's right.
Right,
the historic Harlem, and we
the
know how
historic
many.
Harlem.
Right.
But all eyes, he drawed attention, just as the 11th-term Congressman Adam Clayton Powell drew eyes and attention to Harlem because of the work that they did, because of their activism, because they were not scared to advocate for the Black man or the Black woman. The least of these, as the book of Matthew I always stand on that scripture. When I was hungry, you know, they advocated for the hungry, for the naked, for those who in jail, for the least of these, for those who were not able. Hey, how we say it, Pastor Ali and Minister Abdul Haq Muhammad, brother Ed, the voice for the voiceless. You know, those who wanted to say it would think it, but wouldn't open their mouth. You know, we had a Dr. Calvin Butts that would do it. What do we miss? What will I miss? What do the people miss? We still missing it because we don't have a whole lot of Calvin Butts. And it's kind of hard to when you think about those type of individuals, those type of strong men that, you know, if I know it's Esther that says, if I perish, I'll perish. I'm going to see the king anyhow. That was a woman that said it, but we had a lot of men that said, if I perish, I'll perish. But I'm gonna talk about what's being wrong, what's being done that's unjust, the things that are not right, things that, like I said, that are not popular to go before the people, things that bother. And you, Minister Abdul Haq Muhammad, that the things that you speak on, the things that you do, we are all offspring and siblings of a Dr. Calvin Butts. Some of us are going to still continue. We are the seeds. We are the fruit of the labor of these individuals that have gone on before us, like a Reverend Dr. Calvin Butts. Who, listen, we can't leave out Samuel Proctor. We can't leave out these individuals because they all came before Dr. Calvin Butts. And what did he do? Thank God for the lineage of ministry that Dr. Butts carried on through those who were his predecessors. That, you know, I say a lot of times when you're lining up the dominoes, you know, you line them up in order, but when they fall in order. And what's really a great thing is that Dr. Butts, matter of fact, he was just at Newark not long ago with the mayor for the Choose Healthy Life event that was done at, mind you, was it Metropolitan, Pastor Ali?
Yeah, I believe so.
He came, so thank God that his foot tread upon Lord's soil not even a year ago, you know. And we thank God for that, that we were able to put our eyes upon someone who has done such great things and such activism. Harlem will never be the same. Abyssinian hasn't been the same for a minute. And we know that we just have to look at the lessons we can learn from a Reverend Dr. Calvin Butts. And we pray for the Abyssinian family. We pray for the son, the children, of all that are connected. And I posted today, and we pray for those whose lives he touched, those who served with him, those who learned with him, those who walked hand in hand with him. Those individuals need prayer too. But the greatest gain for them is that if you walked hand in hand and worked side by side Dr. Calvin Butts, you're carrying something with you in memory of him. And part of that is the work that you did with him. And it must be carried on.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You know, we can't say enough about a brother of his stature, again, his dignity.
So we can talk about him all day.
That's
If we
right,
start
his
listing
integrity.
accomplishments, and listing all of the things that he did, all of the people he worked with, knowing that Dr. Martin Luther King was one of his, I don't like the word idol, but someone that he follows the teachings of. But when you start looking, I was listening to Al Sharpton not long ago, and he said no matter what people thought or said or tried to change the mind of Dr. King, he still taught and preached nonviolence. You know, Dr. Butts stood on his principles. And you know what? Let me go ahead because I know y'all got some more stuff to say.
No, that's. I mean, I think
This is
it's
y'all
all
show.
connected. It's all connected.
That's right.
Reverend Councilwoman Roundtree, in terms of
Yes.
we talk about a man like Reverend Butts, and again, as Brother Ed said, Brother Zaid so eloquently showed us that Reverend Butts was a man who wasn't just confined to his church, but he was an
No,
politically, socially. He was,
social action at its best.
that's right. His situational awareness in terms of Black America, what was going on. Brother Ed shared about how Reverend Butts opened his church for the ministers so many times. He talked about Fidel Castro, which is a revolutionary move for somebody in Reverend Butts' position, being a pastor. I mean, Abyssinia has always had a revolutionary spirit that didn't just start with him or Clayton Powell.
That's right.
That's the origin, the genesis of that church, which has always been, you know, on the precipice of change and the cutting edge of change. So they came in that line of divine and that tradition. But we see, again, what's happening in Black America as it relates to these midterm elections. We see what's going on in Georgia with Stacey Abrams. Again, we're talking about somebody like Reverend Butts, who was politically judicious, had, you know, great political insight and awareness. So we, you know, it's all in line and it all adds up. As we see these midterm elections coming up, November 8th, what's happening in Georgia, we've seen the debates with Herschel Walker and Warnock. You know, we kind of see, I mean, the ambivalence or the mixed feelings and controversy a lot of times that follows these political races. We see what's happening with Stacey Abrams and what's going on in there. What is our thoughts on that? And particularly, you, Councilwoman Roundtree, being newly elected, we know your background. We know how hard you have worked. We see you making a shift and a transition. So what are your thoughts on that? Being as though we just seen what happened in Newark with the re-election of Mayor Ras J. Baraka, yourself, and many others. So what are your thoughts in terms of these midterm elections, and particularly what's happening in the South in Georgia? You as well, Pastor Ali and Brother Zaid.
So let me just say this. No matter what's happening, I'm calling everybody I know right now. I got the clergy. I spoke to the clergy, and I'm going to continue speaking to them. I've had people of the clear persuasion, believe it or not, calling me, asking me to reach out to my friends in Georgia. I am truly, truly aware of one thing. I had a girlfriend named Joanne who used to say, one thing for certain and two things for sure. Is that how it go, Pastor Ali?
Yes, ma'am.
That the truth of the matter is that nothing, this woman is powerful. Stacey Abrams is powerful. She's got the greatness within her. Whatever they tried to do within our elections, just so as our dear brother with the orange hair, the red hair, whatever color it was, whatever he tried to do on January 6th, it didn't go through. And I believe the same thing with these midterms, no matter what they're trying to do. See, Brother Ali and Brother Baba and Brother Ed and Ed, you know, all of you know, it looks like I'm the only woman on right now because Donna's not here. But in reference to the advocacy of what's going on with our election, we already know the suppression is real. It's not a joke. We already know that. So being that it's not a joke, and being that they will try to do some things with these midterms or make every effort they can, we know the power is with the people. I mean, don't y'all agree with this?
I definitely agree with that. I just got
You're starting to sound like a panther there, young queen.
I'm just saying.
About the power with the people.
You know what the problem is?
Sound like Chairman Bobby and Chairman Fred. And
the problem,
say it again. Say it again.
This is the problem. We got the power, But somebody somewhere in their mind have got their own selves convinced that they have no power. I told some people today, consistency is the key. What we have to keep telling you, how many years do we have to tell our people that you got the power, but you got to get up off your butt and use it? We've got God-given authority that God has given us to make the move. Our money matters, our lives matter, our ministry matters, our revolution. When they say this revolution will not be televised, listen, they've been televising, killing us, lynching us, trying to suppress us for hundreds and hundreds, and not 400 years, long before that. So, if sometime, somewhere or another, we got to keep talking. Wake the hell up, people. We got the power.
Yeah.
Don't midterms, no terms, any term. We got the power. Get
Midterm,
your
no term,
behind
any
and
term.
make a difference. The problem is some of our own people are our worst enemies.
Uh-oh.
Is this true?
Uh-oh.
And you're saying it right, Roundtree. I was just in Georgia, and that's one of the things that disturbed me while I was in Atlanta was the silence of the people. You know, the commercial.
Listen, how many people stand behind Martin Luther King that was supposed to be his boys?
Yeah.
Come on, that's a pure, perfect
I mean,
example.
You know, Warnock, he has his commercials. Stacey has her commercials. But the amazing thing, the main commercial they've been pushing in Atlanta is Herschel Walker.
Come on here.
And he talked about his mental health. And he talks about that Warnock has nothing about redemption. And what he's saying in so many words, I lost my mind. I regained it. I wrote a book. I'm a Christian. Vote for me. No plan, no anything, nothing about people, nothing about people of color in the commercials. And at least Warnock has a interracial body. He's smart, but here it is. Herschel said he doesn't care about redemption. This man is fighting hard, and you making it a spiritual issue when you talking about politics. So you talking about all the people in Atlanta. And I mean, I was very disturbed by going through Atlanta, going through the airports and stuff like that. And you don't hear no conversation among the local people.
Yeah, we just sitting quiet.
Dealing with the election.
Like
So is it true?
sitting on the sidelines
in
watching.
the hotel, it was more Caucasian people talking because Morehouse had their homecoming at the time we were there. It was more Caucasian people asking questions or making comments about the midterms and Stacey Abrams and them than it was of people of color.
So what has Pastor Ali, Brother Ed, throwing the question under, what has contributed to this attitude or this silence that you say you've seen in Atlanta and Georgia? What is contributing to it? I saw an article or a story, a headline that Herschel Walker maybe was up a few points in the polls. I don't know how true, how authentic that is. But what is contributing to this attitude or this silence?
Those that control him are behind him and put out for him. They know he would never control anything.
That's right.
He doesn't have the capacity to control or to govern. He's their poster boy to say we can run a black man against Warnock. He's just nothing but a puppet. Nothing but a puppet. And when you look at the people are so stressed out, so to speak. The school system, their kids sick with the RSV and the virus and everything.
We got to do a whole segment on that.
They so stressed out, just trying to do everyday living. I mean, my son lives in Georgia. I didn't even get a chance to see him because he's working. He had just came back from Philly, working hard, dropping his young kids off because he has grown kids and young kids, and just basically trying to make it. And unlike New Jersey, it's not like you can get on the bus and go around the corner and you're at the job. Everybody has to travel. So when you look at the traffic, when you look at the people going through stuff, and you look at all of them trying to maintain their cost of living, trying to maintain their level of living, many of them are silent and afraid because they're being threatened. Their livelihood is being threatened today as we know it with lies.
But you know what, Pastor Ali? And I don't mean to sound, like listen, you know, parents need to be with their children. But when you look at the sacrifices of some of our activists who lost their lives, they had children. When you look at Medgar Evers that was in his driveway, he was a father. Uh, and I believe I don't know that scripture about God did not give us a spirit of fear, but
Power, love, and a
spirit of
sound mind.
power, love, and a sound mind. I don't believe that some nights they laid down, they were not concerned about their lives. But that didn't stop them
Good
from
point.
wanting to make a difference in their community. I think that the hearts of the people, it's not for everybody. I used to say that about you. When you used to hear me say it in the clergy meetings, when I first got the assignment, I would say everybody's assignment is not to be on the bullhorn in the middle of the street.
That's right.
That's not everybody's assignment. But I said, but I know Ali's not the only one out of 400. So somebody has
He was
got
one
to.
of the
But I'm
few.
not the only one to stand in the middle of the street and Sharif. If one can send 1,000 and two can send 10,000, where are we with the scripture, Brother Muhammad? Where are we with the word? We run around talking about the Quran and the Bible. We talk about the Holy Script, but where are we? Where are we with the word, with the basic instructions of life before leaving earth? Where are we?
That's a great point, Reverend Roundtree. Again, we talking about the legacy of someone like Reverend Butts. Again, why magnitude, his influence was so important, because he wasn't one who was confined to his church or only his congregation.
Exactly.
He was people. Again, he was very politically astute, socially aware, social activist, and that's what you're talking about. And Brother Ed, Pastor Ali, you saying, in terms of what's happening to the people, that life is happening to the people, that they're stressed. And this is a very perilous time. The scripture says that we have entered into a time of gross darkness to people. So this is a very perilous and troublesome time. However, whenever time becomes dark, becomes dismal, God prepares men and women who are for the time. Right. And these are the type of circumstances and situations that produce great leaders, that produce a Calvin Butts, many others that you talked about, Medgar Evers. So they're out there, but we do see, as you said, Pastor Ali, the condition of the people. I just read the article that the mayor did, I believe in NJ.com, where it talked about how last year over 100,000 students dropped out of school in 2021. And they talked about COVID and all of the circumstances and the conditions that contributed to that.
That's right.
So we know that this is, a very perilous, unprecedented time. And I believe that the people of Atlanta, will rise up and do what they have always done. We have had great men and women, giants in the Black community that have come from Georgia. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad is from there. Dr. King is from there. So many others are from that area. So it's something in the soil, in the water, down in old Georgia, that produced a certain spirit of activism, a certain spirit of revolutionary. So we know that the people of Georgia will rise up. This won't be the first time that their backs have been against the wall. It won't be the last time that their back will be against the wall. But we know that there's a saying that the hottest places of hell are reserved for those who in the time of Christ maintain their neutrality. So this is not a time to be neutral. We have to stand up for what's right, what's just, what's equitable. We're talking about Georgia. We see what's happening with the black farmers. So much is happening. Not that it's anything new in terms of black people, voter suppression. Many of these issues we've been dealing with for a long time. We have always risen up, and did what was best. But Brother Ed, what are your thoughts on what's happening in Georgia? Brother Ed, you always talk about black people being politically aware, being more politically knowledgeable. So what are your thoughts in terms of what you see, your observation?
Well, I think that that's it, right? I think that, the conversation we had with the mayor on the mayor's forum, remember Zaid, we were talking about, how could someone even consider, I don't want to call Herschel Walker out of his name, but this man,
Herschel Walker was out of his African mind when he was a goddamn football player with the
Lord
damn
Jesus.
Dallas Cowboys. I said he was out of his mind then, and he out of
I'm
his
not
goddamn
saying.
mind now.
So,
Every time I call it.
but the issue is that how can these brothers and sisters in Georgia actually vote against their own interests? That's was crazy to me. And on the other level, it seems to be, because it's really, or at least what she said. She said if the brothers decided to vote for her, she would win.
Yep.
And it seems to
You
be
talking about Stacey Abrams?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she said the majority of black men seem to have a problem with her. And a lot of the brothers in the hood, now Killer Mike, and this is something we were going over with John, what Killer Mike was saying, she wasn't necessarily going in the hood. She wasn't going to all of the places that Governor Kemp was going to. And she said that's not necessarily true. And then who knew? She gave her resume. And she talked about having a brother who's currently in prison. She talked about currently having a brother, who's actually, tied up in the legal system. Who knew? And remember, this lady was almost the vice president of the United States, right? But what she was trying to say to them brothers and sisters in Georgia, when them brothers were saying she don't come in the hood, she was saying, I am the hood.
That's right.
That my brothers are going through the same thing you all are
Come
going
on, brother Ed. That's right.
I think that's what she was trying to say. And I think that Killer Mike and them didn't really know that. And then I think that part of it is because she speaks so well, right? And people get that mixed up because she's a lawyer. She has incredible funding, from Bloomberg. I think a lot of that, them brothers get confused. But like the mayor said, these brothers are voting against their own interests. Who would you have a better opportunity of getting your issues heard with? Would it be with Stacey Abrams, or would it be with Governor Kemp? Who would it be? And that's what you got to ask yourself.
Governor Kemp. Let's
Ain't that something?
we ain't got
and that's what I was saying, Barbara. Brother Ed, that's what I was saying. Our own. What we think is our own, they really ain't our own. So if there's our own, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But those who look like us and in our company and have the ancestors have been through the same struggles, the same ancestors, same struggle. Those are the ones that will look beyond Stacey Abrams' circumstance and see something they want to see, their own view, their own personal perspective of what they think, and they look way beyond the reality. See, that's another thing we don't do. We don't research. We don't ask questions. We just assume. We just take what we think, because somewhat, like you said, brother, who knew? Mm-hmm. Who knew the sister was portraying I am the hood? I just did some other things to better myself so that I can speak this way. Because let me tell you, I tell folks all the time, whatever your situation is, no matter how bad it is, it does not determine your destination.
Right.
So whatever her situation was, whatever her brother's situation is, all of those things surrounding her is not going to determine her destination. And up until this point, this sister has done such magnificent, great things. Why would you not want to empower her, even without the research, knowing what she has done and the power that she may have to make a difference in your life, in your future, in your state?
Right.
My God.
Brother Ed, Brother Zaid, I know Ed, you've been following it. So in terms of what is the poll projections now in terms of Stacey Abrams, Kemp, Herschel Walker, Warnock? What is the poll saying now in reference to how close it is? Or
let me say this about the polls. I don't give a damn about them damn polls.
That's right. That's right.
Most of us don't control that bullshit. Look. Well, I'm more concerned about the souls, right? Listen to you clergy
Come
folks. I
on
need
here.
y'all to push that.
So
I need y'all to
going
push
to the
that
polls.
souls to the polls line. That's what I need
Go to
y'all
the
to push.
polls.
No.
You
They go out there.
They're all
50
saying that they're close, but this cat, we got to take apart this. You know, we know what we got with Trump's behind, but we got to take apart this chump, Kemp.
Kemp.
He got to be governor by first being the Secretary of State. The Secretaries of State oversee elections. Before he became governor, before he made us run for governor, he personally oversaw the purging of 1.5 million black and brown people from the polls.
Talk about it, brother.
Suppression
Talk
strategy
about
that they do.
1.5.
And any person of African descent, I don't care what kind of black man he says he is, if he's going to vote for a Kemp over a Stacey Abrams, he is
my
as
Lord.
out of his African mind as Herschel Walker.
Yep.
Heard what the hell he get, right? Stacey Abrams is not only one of the most talented sister and deserving of her generation, she is one of the best organizers of her generation.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
She almost got to be vice president because she organized herself into that position.
That's right.
Right? And none of those other folks who were considered for that post have anything like that at all in their repertoire, including the one who's actually sitting next to Biden, who is the vice president. Stacey Kemp is an organizer. So I'm and you know, for whatever it's worth, you know, your favorite president just rolled into town for her yesterday. So I hope the Negroes who were on the fence about her behind their own, you know, backward stuff around their own sexism, and we need to call that for what it is. Hope they look at it, damn, you know, brother, president is down. Well, I guess I ought to give her a play, you know. I mean,
well, brother, I don't know, because you know, since Obama, I mean, it was a point very recently where Black America was kind of saying that, you know, it'd be best if Obama kind of keep his mouth closed because some of the viewpoints and the position that he was taking was kind of like they were seeming a little asinine coming from him. So again, there's this degree of ambivalence, you know, these mixed feelings and controversy in the Black community as it relates to many of our political leaders, public figures. That's always going to be, but you know, I just think that you know, we have to continue to remain vigilant, be objective, and you know, be aware, situational awareness, politically aware, politically astute. You know, we talk about it all the time in terms of Black America's political awareness. We talk about voter suppression, but we also know there's a great degree of voter apathy. We've seen that here in Newark. I think this was one of the lowest turnouts in terms of voting.
That was very low
in a very long time. So it's not just voter suppression, but it's also voter apathy as it relates to Black America. But it's 6:56. The hour has been well spent. Again, we want to send our condolences to the family of Reverend Butts. I haven't been on the show since the passing of the great helper of the Honorable Minister Lord Farrakhan, the national spokesperson of the Nation of Islam, Dr. Sister Ava Muhammad. We send our condolences to her family, her husband, Brother Darius, all of those who have been helping her on her show. She was a great helper to the Honorable Minister Lord Farrakhan and our nation. She'll be greatly missed. But, you know,
stay there, son. Stay there.
Yes,
Take these last couple minutes and talk about this Black woman who represented the dignity for the Nation of Islam for Black women. She was a pioneer for the
powerhouse.
Powerhouse. Talk about her for a minute. You deserve that, and she deserves that.
The minister put over a mosque, actually in Atlanta, Georgia, mosque number 15. She was over that mosque. We know that she helped the minister so many battle fronts. We took out we sued the New York Times for slander, for downright lies. We know she was very instrumental in terms of many of the legal cases that we dealt with, dealing with the United States government of America, us against them. So she was, you know, I mean, very brilliant, a lover of the Black man, Black women, and Black people, author of several books. She was a wife, a mother, you know, a lawyer by profession and trade. And, you know, she's going to be greatly missed. I don't know if you all seen the janaza that was performed and officiated by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, when he gave a lot of depth and insight to Sister Ava. She helped transcribe or dictate the study guides that we have in the Nation of Islam, given to us by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Just a great, great sister, a great helper. Again, a lover of Black people, Black women and Black men in particular, freedom fighter. Again, she's going to be greatly missed. But as we said about Reverend Butts, you know, she lives on through her legacy, her great body of work. She had a great body of work, a plethora of lectures that she did, touching on a variety of topics and subjects. You know, so we love Sister Ava. We love all that she has done. You know, she's going to be greatly missed, gone but not forgotten, and she does live on through her work. So, you know, thank you, Brother Ed and Reverend Roundtree and Pastor Ali, Brother Zahir, for, you know, giving me a minute to speak on her and what she did and what she means and what she will forever mean to us. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan really, really loves her and he really misses her. So thank you all, you know, for your well wishes, Brother Ed, your condolences, Reverend Roundtree. We really appreciate it and we thank you.
Thank you, son. Thank you.
Any closing remarks, Reverend Roundtree, Pastor Ali, Brother Ed? I know the hour is 6:59, Brother John, but we kicking us off.
I want to thank all of you. September 12th, many of you came and supported me during my hour of bereavement. And while we talk about legacy and those who have been called from labor to reward, Sister Ava, I hear you tell the story of her and how the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan entrusted so much in her care, and that she was a wise woman. She was one who was a trailblazer. So as we sit here and we remember those, Sister Ava and Dr. Calvin Butts, and even my dad, Reverend Dr. Malachi Roundtree, they live on through us. They live on through us. How can we remember what we miss about them? Is to keep doing some of what we're able to do, assigned to us, that they fought for us and our people. That's how we can remember what we miss. And that is to, like I said, just carry on. It's an honor to be with you, Brother Ed. I will not forget Minister Abdul Haq Muhammad inviting me to be a part of this disciple family. I was already a part of the family, but to be a part of this family with Brother Ed on the number one hip-hop radio station, WRNU. Thank you so much, all of you guys. For you, Brother Baba, giving me the name Reverend Revolutionary Roundtree. I just thank God for being able to serve with all of you. I am now the chair on the Municipal Council of the Veterans Affairs Committee. Go figure. I will be doing a salute to those who laid down their lives on November 11th at 12 o'clock at Military Park. November 22nd, I will be feeding 400 people, partnership with Applebee's, which is something I do every year. That will be a sit down. It'll be a grab and go on November 11th. And tonight, as we all know, the mayor has his men's meeting. It's being held tonight. I believe it's Central High is Minister Abdul Haq Muhammad. It's a great thing. Today they had a major education, the roadmap to education equity 2022. All types of speakers. The mayor led that. Dr. Shani Brown. So it's not like the information's not there, things for us to do to make sure that our people are informed and educated. It's just that we have to get up and go. And my prayer is that God will move on the hearts and minds of the people. The Sister Stacy gonna be all right. Isn't that all right with you guys? Don't you all agree with me?
Amen.
We just gonna pray that the hearts and the minds, because God knows some of our people sure need some prayer for their minds. I pray every day, Minister Abdul Haq Muhammad, just let me keep my mind. Don't let me get in here that I lose that. But we know Herschel Law says, so we better be careful. Because we done already have one crazy running in office. We don't need nobody else nowhere crazy, running nothing. All right,
Well,
that's it.
I'm grateful. I'm just asking y'all keep my granddaughter lifted up. She was shot 3 times last month by a young black male in Virginia Beach, and her grandmother funeral today, and I just think out that it could have been her. It could have been her funeral that we were burying, but her grandmother transitioned from cancer, and we pray for her. But I'm concerned about my granddaughter. She's 18 years old, and she's, post-traumatic stress. She's trying to process these 2 bullet wounds to her face and 1 to her leg, and all she was doing was helping a fellow girlfriend. And this young male ran around the corner and shot up the car, and she survived by the grace of God. So I'm just grateful that it could have been me also talking about bereavement, but in the midst of it, God kept her, and I'm grateful for that.
We're gonna keep her lifted in prayer again, and we can't forget Reverend Roundtree, your father. We talked about Reverend Butts. Your father was our champion here in North. Great legacy, great foundation that he laid. We'll forever be grateful for him and the seed that he helped to produce. So we thank God much for his hard work and his dedication. The historic Good Neighbor Baptist Church, his lifelong legacy, providing housing for people in North, and just his brilliance. So we thank God much for him.
Thank you, my brother.
For everybody who are now listening audiences, we praying for you until next time. If there's nothing else, any announcements, Brother Ed, then we'll get out the way.
Well, brother,
right on time.
Brother Jonathan, where you
But I just came to say hi, man. I just came to say hi.
The disciples
where you been all this time? I was like, wow, Brother Jonathan must be on vacation.
Yeah, he's like knocking us off normally.
Thank you, I just haven't seen you in such a long time, Minister Muhammad. I'm like, hey, how are you? I love my disciples.
Good to see you, brother.
Is that why we got overtime today? Because you hadn't seen Minister Abdullah?
I haven't seen him in a long time.
Right, we missed
and of course, Councilwoman, right? Like I was like, you just talk. It's all good. It's all good. And of course, Pastor Ali, good seeing you too, man.
Thank you so much, brothers. May God bless you. Assalamu alaikum, and sister. Thank
you. God bless.
Hey.
Oh, this is good.
Absolutely.
This is so good.
So we have I always love the disciples. I love the camaraderie, what they bring to it. It's always good.
Oh, I got Pam on the phone. She's supposed to be coming on. Let me get her straight.
Okay. Can you do the introduction to Isis Mystery first?
I do have to give a shout out to Brother Zaid, who corrected my Kemetic pronunciation of my name, Uset, Aziz in Arabic, and Isis in English and Greek. I just had to give that shout out, Brother Zaid.
Nice. Zaid, you're on mute. Oh, I guess he is on mute. All right. So I know that
I'm talking to Pam at the same time. Hold on. Go ahead. Keep talking.
All right. So I did like that last section. Had great conversations. Honoring Calvin Butts and honoring honoring the people who have passed, right? Like honoring the councilman's father. And there's so much that people have done that we grew up with their work. And we are glad that people are giving them their respect. We are talking about someone else who's given a lot for the movement right now. And we're going to be talking about Mumia Abu-Jamal, certain things that are going on with him and with that case. Zaid is always the best person to introduce what's going on because he's been, I know, working in these areas for many, many years, over decades actually, right? So Zaid, are you good?
33 years.
33 decades.
33 years. Mm-hmm. My hair was red, now it's gray now. It was red then and it's gray now. All right.
So since like 89. You're talking about like since 1989.
Yeah, that's when I
met 1989, another summer.
Right. That's right. Okay. I was just on with Pam. Pam has been fighting. She's got full-fledged laryngitis, right? She was struggling yesterday. She sounded a little better yesterday, but it went to full-fledged laryngitis. So we're not going to have my big sister, our beloved Minister of Confrontation, and that's her real post. Minister of Confrontation for MOVE and the long-standing chair and leader of the International Friends and Family of Mumia Abu Jamal, an amazing black woman who I love to death, one of my favorite people on this earth. And I don't have too many favorites, right? But that's my big sister. You know, been at her back for 32 of those 33 years. We've really been riding together in a very profound way on this walk, and we've gotten some very important. And I just want to lift her up for a minute, if I may, right? We've done some huge things with her. When Mumia went on trial, and in the aftermath of his conviction, you know, he had been so thoroughly demonized and villainized, right, that he was a pariah to the city of Philadelphia and made a pariah to his people. The MOVE family and the attack on him from state forces in Philadelphia escalated after he left the Black Panther Party, became this profound and highly respected journalist, and dared to actually tell the story of the young organization that was MOVE, that young pioneering environmental justice movement, right? Daring to tell their story in the face of some brutal and savage police repression. That escalated him being a particular target for the city of Philadelphia. Pam is the one whose organizing commitment and finesse, you know, brought them out of that horrible aura of the attack of 1978, Powelton Village, that landed most of them in prison, which became the MOVE 9. And, even more horribly, the bombing of MOVE on Friday, the May 13th, 1985, the Osage Avenue bombing of MOVE, right? They had to come, somebody had to step out of the smoke and ashes and blood of all of that and somehow put those pieces back together, bring people together from wherever support would come from in order to create this circle of solidarity that genuinely became an international movement, right? So I want to salute my big sister, and I want folks to understand who they're missing and what they're missing. She's not just, you know, a fiery, fearless warrior on the street with her mouth. She was a profoundly resilient and creative and tireless organizer who had to overcome those kinds of hurdles, right, to get us where we are today. And where are we today, right? Most of her comrades from MOVE are out of prison, right? Folks thought that would never happen, that almost all of them would die in captivity. Two did, right? Two did, right? But the rest of them, none of them gave up. She never gave up. Those of us, once we embraced what we had to do to support them and lift them up, we never gave up, and we have gotten them out of prison, right? And for all of the challenges that came out of the hearings a couple of days ago, right? And we're gonna get into that in a little while, and I'll introduce ISIS in my own way as we do that, right? Mumia even we had to bring him out of isolation, because not only was he in prison and sentenced to, he was sentenced to death. And the Black Panther Party has a profoundly challenging history with the death penalty. Huey P. Newton survived the death penalty, right? Angela Davis survived the death penalty, right? Jamal Nasser and Zion Israel did not survive the death penalty. They were executed in the state of Indiana in the 1990s, right? Lawrence Ghana Hayes out of New York survived the death penalty. My big sister, Safia Asia Bukhari, survived the death penalty, right? But everybody didn't. and the die was cast that Mumia would not survive her, but we started turning that corner in the nasty 90s and turned it enough to stay the hand of the state in 1995. You know, they tried to, they were going to execute Mumia on Marcus Garvey's birthday. That's the kind of contempt and disregard they had for our movement, and that's how hell bent they were on trying to intimidate so many of us with how they were going to do it. But the people said, "Oh hell no, it's not going to go down like that." And the international dimensions of our movement around Mumia have indeed been and continue to be hugely important. It mattered then in 1995. It mattered later in 2001 when Governor Ridge signed another death warrant for Mumia. We had to go. We marched to Harrisburg. Marched on the Capitol on his inauguration. So it ain't going down like that, right? So what, you have a contract with America? We haven't signed that contract, Ridge, right? And so we resisted that, got that in the federal court, ultimately got Mumia off of death row, right? Coming out of those dark spaces of the 70s and the 80s, where they came under some brutal attack and some of the most vicious kind of demonization anybody can face, and the monstrous construct that is the national white media order of this country, right? So even though we did not hear what we wanted to hear and see what we wanted to see out of this new young judge in court yesterday, we are the people. We believe in the power of the people. And the Pam was here. She said, "We're the power of the people. We're the power of the people, and the power of the people don't stop." Right? So we're not going to stop. We're going to get ready to do what we have to do to take this thing to the next stage. And we know it's going to be difficult. We know we got to embarrass some more folks. We got to raise some more hell, and we got to shut down some more streets. We got to do what we got to do. We got to do what we've been doing, right? And I was really hoping to hear from her, because right after we did what we did in Philly, she went right to Mumia, went right to him, gave him a fresh report, right? Got some fresh feedback from him. He actually addressed us when we were on the street while the proceedings were going on. He called into us while we were on the street and doing that. So I wanted to lift up my big sister, because she is one of my favorite comrades on this earth, right? And she's one of those few that I would go all the way for, if y'all understand what all the way means. So I just want to give her due in her absence. So I also was also originally going to have my little sister, Joanna Fernandez, on, who Joanna had become one of our top spokespersons for Mumia by virtue of her credentials and her gifts and her commitment. And Joanna did something hugely powerful and pivotal for Mumia that has not gotten the attention that it should get. And when we get ready to go back to court on the 16th, she'll be in a better position to come on too. But Brown University, right, highfalutin Ivy League school, now has the papers of Mumia Abu-Jamal. And that's something that on the strength of who Joanna Fernandez is. And I didn't know that Joanna went to Brown, right? Joanna was a hell raiser when she was a student at Brown, right? She came to us. I remember the day I met this little sister. We were in Harlem doing a minor walk for Mumia on what we used to call 7th Avenue, now Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard. This demure, beautiful, humble young professor with about 7 or 8 of her students came up. We want to give support. Within a few months, she had dropped a film on Mumia, right? and it's been blasting away ever since. Some of us know that she had a major battle with a health challenge a little while ago that took her away from us for a minute, and it was great to see her in her own elevated form when she was with us a couple of days also. So I'm looking forward to us bringing Joanna back as well with Pam, so we can uplift all of that, right? And so we might not have gotten what we wanted or seen what we wanted in court, but we're seeing some other things too. We still moving forward. Mumia's name is still electrifying people all over the world, all over the world. So in their desperation and in their racism and in their fear and in their contempt of life, people, they're still trying to do their mess. But we will not give up. He has not given up. Those who've gone on before us have not given up, and we're not going to give up till we get him out of here, right? So I'll say that. I'll say that we're supposed to be back in court for him on the 16th of December. Background, everybody. I didn't give background on why that's so important. We were in court for Mumia a couple of days ago for an evidentiary hearing that was granted to Mumia by a judge, a black Republican judge by the name of Tucker, who last year, or it was actually probably 2 years ago now, right? In the face of D.A. Krasner discovering, you know, that's a loaded word, given the history of colonialism, discovered a number of boxes of documents that pertain to Mumia's case. And of course, in those boxes were some things that legal folks, and I got this young law professor who's going to break that down in a minute, right? That has some what appears to be exculpatory evidence, right? In those boxes. And that judge said, well, you know, he deserves a hearing on the merits of that, and that could possibly lead to, at best, a new trial. And of course, when he did that, all of the machinery of the state moved against getting him off of the case, right? And putting that in anybody's hands but his, because he could not be intimidated. He could not be swayed by the politics of the state and the demands of the state. And he voted and worked and followed, you know, legal principle in the principal way, right? So we got some ways to go, but that's the background. We were in court the other day. I met this incredible young woman on the bus who had been a POP member for a few minutes. The organization has been having virtual meetings since COVID hit, right? So we got folks who are on the call that some of us ain't seen, you know, and Isis was one of those folks, and she was sitting right across from me. We got into a conversation, and she laid out, you know, some of the things that she was into. I said, "You going in the courtroom," right? Because I had to explain to everybody as soon as we got on the bus that the courtroom is probably not going to be big enough for its magnitude of what's going to be heard. It's going to be stacked with police officers and the widow, and the other side will be, you know, our people, and we need certain people in the court, but a lot of us are going to be downstairs in the street rallying in the community. And of course, I had to put myself in that number, because that's one of the things that I do. But law professor, practices and practice in several states, has been all over the country. A Renaissance woman in a very real way. She's got a plethora of talents in theater, teacher, in addition to being a virulent legal mind. I said, you got to go in the court. We need your skill set in your court. We need your sensibility in the court, because we may need you to help explain these things to our people. And so I'm glad she's in our circle and in our ranks. And that is one Isis, Ms. Dowry. We're glad to have you with us. Welcome to All Politics Are Local. I know this is your first time with us, and we're also being joined by the chair, the founding chair of the People's Organization for Progress, our long distance runner, Dimu Changa, Lawrence Ham. Right? So, Dimu, I'm glad you got on, because, you know, in terms of Pop's history with Mumia's case, we've got our own stories to tell that you took point for, that are very important, that we all appreciate. So let's talk, you know. Let's talk. Jonathan, where do you want to begin?
Well, you gave us a great exposition, and I just want to know if I have this right, because, you know, I'm always learning, right? And I learned most of the stuff from you and Lawrence Ham and people and Todd Burrows, right? And I heard that there was a box of stuff found that was possibly exculpatory evidence from Emil Bujamal, who's been in jail since for what year was he in prison?
December 9th, 1981.
Since 1981, he's been locked
December
in
9th
prison.
will mark 40 years.
And
he was
and
on
you know,
death row for 30 years.
And he was accused of killing a police officer. There were multiple movies and documentaries made about it. There were multiple things about the case that many people all over the world, right? Like people all over the world, politicians, I believe at one point a former wife of a prime minister of France. There are other people who have come out and said that he needs a new trial. They need to look at the evidence. And this has been for years. And only like a year ago, maybe 2 years ago? How long ago did they find this box that literally had letters in it that talked about like,
where's
hey,
my money?
Right, pay me for somebody who testified against him.
They had more than that. ISIS, acknowledged that there's some other things that was in that box that need to be examined too. But
so tell me what happened.
The cutting edge piece was where's my money?
So let's start with
what. Let me just break that down. Robert, one of the people that were used by the prosecution to testify against Mumia, right, was a taxi driver named Robert Schobert, right? And Robert Schobert basically gave them what they wanted him to say. And when you check the facts about where Schobert was, where his car was, and what he testified, he didn't even have the capacity to witness what he said he witnessed, right? So then when you get this questioning about this money that he is asserting.
So was this witness who was like, "Where's my money?" The person who was a major witness, the taxi cab driver, that people were like, based on his testimony, he can't be where he said he was, right? So there was already doubt about whether or not this witness was legit. And there's a box of evidence that was just happened to be found in the police department.
Well, actually, it was in the DA's office. I actually have the letter to Judge Tucker that the district attorney wrote to Judge Tucker on January 3rd, 2019. I can read some of it if you like, that talks about the circumstances of how they came upon the 6 boxes.
Please do. Please do. I'm like, how do they just find this great evidence in the
I think
DA's
it's important
office?
to hear it directly from the district attorney's letter.
Yeah.
To Judge Tucker.
ISIS. Before you read the letter, why don't you set it up and give the summary that you gave us last night to kind of set the stage for reading the letter?
Sure. This, I'd like to give a little bit of the background about how this particular request before the court came about. And this is something that Jonathan started speaking about, which is that the district attorney found 6 boxes. It was actually, and this is what the district attorney describes in the letter, that the DA and the members of his staff were in a remote and largely inaccessible room of the district attorney's office marked storage, looking for office furniture. That's directly from the language of the letter. There were 6 boxes that were labeled Mumia or Abu Jamal, or marked with his full name, Mumia Abu Jamal. And in those 6 boxes, the judge permitted Mumia's attorneys at that time to review the boxes. And inside the boxes were evidence that became the basis of this claim that was filed by Mumia's attorneys. That is Judith Ritter, who is a law professor at Widener, Sam Spital from the NAACP, and Brett Grote from the Abolition Law Center. And the pieces of evidence that were found, this is under the post.
She froze. She's trying to say post-conviction relief procedural process that they have in the state of Pennsylvania.
All right, because we can't, because ISIS, if you can't hear us, we can't hear you right now.
Let me text her to go out and come back in.
Right.
But that's what she's trying to say. She was right in midstream too. She was nailing it. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like I'm just trying to. I think she's back. Well, no, she's out. Yeah, because I'm trying to figure out, like, how do you find 6 boxes of evidence in the district attorney's office of a major worldwide case from 1981, and it's suspect? You were in the middle of talking about what the DA said, like
Yes.
how the DA is bringing this to the judge. Because I got tons of questions about, like, what does the DA say about this? If there's this potentially exculpatory evidence in the DA's office, like, what's this hearing about?
So the hearing, the basis of this request is that there is new evidence, and the attorneys for Mumia are requesting last Wednesday that the judge vacate the verdict. That means to dismiss that verdict, ask for a new trial. The other option, that if the judge was not inclined to do that, was to have an opportunity for discovery, to find out the new evidence and have an evidentiary hearing where there's an opportunity to cross-examine witnesses, for a judge to be able to take a look at the evidence that was discovered. And so the basis for this new petition for relief after conviction, it's basically in 2 categories. The first is evidence that was discovered that Mumia's attorneys argue are related to the credibility of the witnesses. That means the integrity and the validity of their testimony. The second relates to additional information that Mumia's attorneys argue are related to discrimination in the jury selection process. So those are the 2 claims that are the basis for the request to vacate the verdict and order a new trial, or in the alternative, the other option, to have an evidentiary hearing and an opportunity for discovery. So that is essentially what was being heard last Wednesday. So let's talk about the evidence that relates to the key witnesses at trial. We know that these are the 2 witnesses that were the only eyewitnesses. There were 2 other witnesses. One heard the gunshots and then saw Mumia crossing an adjacent parking lot. The other witness, the 4th witness, could not make an identification, and that was something that the district attorney conceded to. What's troubling, and this is what Mumia's attorneys write in their petition, is that the other eyewitness who could not make an identification, his description, his testimony, is inconsistent with the testimony, or Mr. Chaubert's testimony, rather, is inconsistent with this 3rd witness. We're talking about different hairstyles, the different number of gunshots. So things that Mumia's attorneys are arguing are significant differences within their testimony. So let's talk about Mr. Chaubert, this witness, the new evidence that Mumia's attorneys argue that they have discovered in relationship to Mr. Chaubert. There is a letter that was discovered, and it was a letter from Mr. Chaubert to the district attorney. I have the letter right here in Mr. Chaubert's handwriting. May I read it?
Ma'am.
Yes, of course.
Okay, here we go. Mr. McGill, I have been calling you to finish out about the money owed to me. So here is a letter. So I have been calling you. So this letter has been written after phone calls to the prosecutor. Mr. McGill was the prosecutor at trial. So here is a letter finding out about money. Do you need me to sign anything? How long will it take to get it? How was your week off? Good, I hope. Let me know soon. Write me back, Robert Chaubert. So Mumia's attorneys, now this has been evidence that was not previously disclosed to Mumia or his attorneys for over a quarter of a century.
Right.
And so the argument here by Mumia's attorneys is that this is newly discovered evidence. The reason why this is important is that to raise a claim under the Post-Conviction Relief Act in Pennsylvania, requesting relief post-conviction, there's a time limit of 1 year after the date of the final judgment. But there are two exceptions to that time bar, to that time limit. One is if there's government interference, and so that there wasn't an ability to raise those claims because of it. And the second is newly discovered evidence. And based on those, there's three of them, but these are the two bases that Mumia's attorneys argue of why this falls under the exception for the time bar. And that's why this becomes important, because this is not evidence that was previously known. Mumia's attorneys argue that this is evidence of clearly a payment. That this is something that is
of a payment, right?
Go ahead.
Or at least the promise of a payment. It sounds like it was like, yo, you were supposed to give me some money. Do I need to sign something, right?
And you're bringing up a very good point, Jonathan, which is that this would be considered Brady material. And Brady is the United States Supreme Court case, as you know, that said that prosecutors are required to hand over exculpatory evidence, anything that would absolve the community member facing charges. And this includes evidence that would impeach witnesses. That means call into question the validity or the integrity of their testimony. And Mumia's attorneys argue there's case law that says a payment is a classic Brady violation.
Now, even though it doesn't seem like the letter appeared before his original trial, right? And it seems like the letter was written after the original trial. Would they still be required to give it in all of the appeals? Because they appeal, because there are clearly many appeals that happened after the date of that letter, right? And part of it is like, you needed to have handed this over during or before many of those appeals. Is that the claim?
Yes, and there were 5 different actions following post-conviction. This is the 6th. We're talking about the direct appeal, the post-conviction relief, the first hearing post-conviction relief, the appeal of that, the second post-conviction relief. There were 5 different actions following conviction. Yes.
And when is the letter dated for?
The letter there isn't a date that is included within this letter. Let me see. There isn't a date on this letter that's within the exhibits.
Is there any way to date, like what is the prosecution's argument? Like when the prosecution found it seems like the DA found the evidence, right?
They did. They found it, and they brought it to Judge Tucker's awareness actually 1 week after Judge Tucker made the decision about the 5th post-conviction relief request that Mumia made. And Judge Tucker partially granted it. What he granted Mumia was he reinstated his rights to appeal for review. And it was a week after this decision that the DA notified Judge Tucker that these 6 boxes were there.
Wait,
that they found these 6 boxes.
So
I just want to be clear on the timeline.
Right. So this is really interesting timeline, because what you're telling me is there was court action. Like Mumia's lawyers were in court with this particular judge trying to argue that he needed a new hearing. And after the judge granted a partial hearing, right? After
partial relief, reinstating his rights to appeal.
Very partial relief. After that, then 1 week later, did the prosecution say they found it a week later?
They said on December 28th, 2018, the DA and members of his staff went to a remote and largely inaccessible room. So they gave us the date, the district attorney's office, of December 28th, 2018.
And is that date a week after that hearing?
I know that January 3rd was a week after the hearing. So this, I would have to look at the exact date of, I believe that the 5th petition was on December. I'd have to look up that date of when it was that that Judge Tucker made a ruling on that petition. but it was a week before January 3rd. So I think that would land, this December 28th would be after that.
Okay, so they just happened to be going down in the basement a week after and been like, hey, by the way, we just found this. Now, is there anything about how they lost it, how it went out of possession? Because clearly, when did the DA get this evidence? Is the DA answering any of the questions about chain of custody of evidence?
There was no question to that. I mean, this is what they address, Jonathan, in the letter. They say, look, 5 of these boxes contained these designations. 3, they had 18/29, 21/29, 23/29, 24/29, 29/29, which seems to indicate that this is box 18 out of 29, box 21 out of 29. There's a 6th box that has no number at all. And the Commonwealth had already, the district attorney's office at this point previously had handed over 32 boxes for review. And they were labeled 1 out of 32, 2 out of 32, 3 out of 32. And what the Commonwealth is saying is that, I mean, they say this pretty plainly in the letter, that this means the Commonwealth's prior representations that it had produced the complete file for this court's review in this case were incorrect.
Wait, so this is what the DA said.
The
DA said, we hand over all the evidence. I'm sorry, the DA said,
yeah.
No, I want to hear you say it. The DA said, oops, we didn't hand over all the bag. We didn't give the full bag. We kept something back. Oops.
And then they say they said their representations were incorrect. They didn't say oops. They said, although those representations were based upon our diligent search and were accurate to the best of the Commonwealth's knowledge at the time. So they're claiming that our prior representations are incorrect, but that was the most accurate and the best of the Commonwealth's knowledge at that time.
Is there any explanation for the oops? Like that you have incorrectly numbered boxes, or at least you have 1 through 32, but you got some boxes labeled. Is there any explanation as to how this happened?
The only explanation that the district attorney gives, or anything that looks close to an explanation, is that the district attorney's office also writes, this is Tracy Kavanaugh, the assistant district attorney who wrote this letter, that nothing in the Commonwealth's database showed the existence of these 6 additional boxes. All the entries in the database predate this administration, meaning the administration in 2019. So they didn't even have the existence. This is what they're writing, the Commonwealth, the existence of the 6 boxes in their database. I don't see an explanation, but that is about the only thing that may come close, arguably, to that.
So they're not even really offering what happened. They're just like, hey, man, we found these, but we don't want a new trial anyway. Because the district attorney clearly is fighting a new trial, right?
They're fighting a new trial. I mean, when it comes to, they're fighting the order to vacate the conviction. They're fighting the order for a new trial. They're fighting the evidentiary hearing. Now, remember that the standard here for this kind of hearing is the preponderance of the evidence. We're not talking about beyond a reasonable doubt. We're talking about, is it more likely than not? So it is a lower standard than the reasonable doubt standard at trial. And you asked me, Jonathan, a question which I think is a very important question. What is the Commonwealth's response to this letter that Mr. Chaubert wrote?
Right.
And their letter, and I also want to highlight something that you pointed out, which is also in the case law about Brady violations, handing over any evidence that's favorable to the community member facing charges, and that you don't need an agreement, but if there is an understanding or evidence of an understanding, that is also something that would be considered Brady material. So what is the Commonwealth's argument? Commonwealth's argument here is that, Mr. McGill was requesting money for lost wages and low income at the time, his lost income at the time. and that the district attorney in their pleadings, and I just recently received them today, and just so that everybody can see, this is only part of the paperwork. But I also want to show some of the evidence that was in these boxes. I don't know if you can see, but this is what was included in the exhibits. And this is it for both sides, not both together. This is the district attorney's exhibits, which, so in their pleading, the Commonwealth says, well, he was put up in a hotel for his safety. He was getting compensation for the payment for the hotel. Based on the arguments that I heard in the room, because I attended the hearing in room 802 at the Criminal Justice Center in Philadelphia, is that there's no discussion or mention of what the amount of those lost wages are.
Right.
And so that is an argument that was made by Mumia's attorneys about this shows a payment for testimony. This is something that, had the defense attorney had this at trial, would have impeached this witness about a potential financial motive to testify. That
And
would,
at the very least, the prosecution in very contemporary times would have had to show records of what they paid. Like, oh, no, here's just the hotel receipts. And would have had to provide all that stuff, right? They would have had to be at least
receipts.
And right, they would have had to provide receipts. They would have at least had to provide testimony. There would have had to be a lot more follow through than would have the ability to be had now.
There's another layer, though, Jonathan. I want to add this too. All right, and Isis, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Schobert also had some minor legal issues of his own, and that they promised to go away in return for his testimony as well. Right?
Oh,
that's actually Zaid. The second witness, Cynthia White. That's not Mr. Schobert, but you're correct. That's to the second.
They both had the same issue. Yeah.
Now, was this also something that was in those boxes that you found out from those boxes, or is it just something that was
White's was in the boxes? Schobert's other legal issues weren't.
Memoranda, letter, and notes that related to Cynthia White's open misdemeanor cases in Philadelphia at that time. So the second witness was a key witness, which the prosecution, the theory of their case turned on these two eyewitnesses. There was information related to the open cases that Miss White had in Philadelphia. She was serving an 18-month sentence in Massachusetts, was extradited to Pennsylvania for these 3 open cases. There was a memo by the then supervising attorney of the municipal court, District Attorney Washington. And within that memo, it was sent to the district attorney who was assigned to the courtroom that Miss White's cases were in. There were 3 misdemeanor cases. And that it stated that these cases were to be vigorously prosecuted. Now, Mumia's attorneys argue that this memorandum that says we vigorously prosecute these misdemeanors, it seems to be something that is perhaps deflecting from what eventually happened to Miss White's cases, which were eventually dismissed. And so one
that would be evidence of a deal, right? Like, as in, if it says we're going to vigorously prosecute you, and then after the testimony, there's no prosecution, the preponderance of the evidence might be
it's evidence that is relevant to the credibility of the witness. It's something that surely someone would have cross-examined. And in fact, she was cross-examined by the trial court, and that according to the trial record, Miss White said that there were no deals.
Oh, wait. So she said there's no deals, but they had no ability to ask her about her ongoing cases.
At least not the resolution of the ongoing cases. One, and I just want to be clear about what the pleading state and what the record state, that One misdemeanor case was dismissed because a civilian witness did not appear in court. One, that the police officer was no longer on the force. I will say that I have had, officers as a defense attorney who were no longer on the force, working in another jurisdiction, working for state troopers, come in for cases and be subpoenaed on cases.
Right.
The third was that it was dismissed based on the defense attorney's motion to dismiss. But this is the resolution of these three cases. And so again, this is evidence, Mumia's attorneys argue, that goes to the credibility of these witnesses.
And the preponderance of the evidence should be the preponderance of, would this evidence have played a factor inside?
Is there a reasonable, the language is there a reasonable probability that the outcome would have been different?
Okay. So, which is a low threshold, right? Especially if you're talking about two of the witnesses that are very important, their credibility seems to be in question. Now, so what happened at the hearing?
What happened at the hearing was that the judge gave an opportunity for both sides to argue their pleadings. So they submitted each of their pleadings before the court. They had an opportunity to argue. The Commonwealth had an opportunity to respond to those arguments. And the judge questioned both sides on their arguments.
Now, is this the same judge who ordered the hearing?
This is.
What? You talked about a Republican.
Tucker ordered the hearing
this
originally.
Judge Lucretia Clements.
Yes, right.
So this is a different judge.
It was assigned to Clemens afterwards.
Say it again, Zaid.
It was assigned to Clemens afterwards.
Yes.
After Tucker made his order.
And so it was assigned to Judge Clemens's courtroom, and Judge Clemens heard the claims. And right now, what Judge Clemens did at the end of arguments was provide to both sides a 31-page, I believe it's 31-page notice of an intent to dismiss. She has given Mumia's attorneys 20 days to respond. And then after that, 10 days for the Commonwealth to respond. The new court date is going to be December 16th in the same courtroom 802.
What is an intent to dismiss? What does that mean?
The intent to dismiss is that the judge is providing notice that they're going to dismiss and provides the arguments, provides the basis ahead of time.
But
also
they're going to dismiss what? What does that mean? Dismiss what?
That means dismiss the petition entirely.
Oh, in other words, the judge said, we don't believe any of this. This new box stuff doesn't make a difference. I'm good. I'm about to ignore all this exculpatory evidence.
Well, what the judge says in the notice to the intent to dismiss is that the Batson challenge was waived, and the Batson challenge is the discrimination in jury selection. And it's called the Batson challenge because of the Supreme Court case that says prosecutors, you have strikes called preventary strikes, where you can strike without giving a reason.
Right.
But you cannot do so to exclude jurors on the basis of race.
Right.
And so what the judge writes, and this again is, I just got this notice for intent to dismiss this morning, but what I read is that the judge is stating that the defense attorney at trial, after in voir dire, in jury selection, did not raise this issue. I think what Mumia's attorneys are arguing, and this is also important because of the evidence that they found in the boxes, the additional information that relates to, that they argue is additional information related to discrimination in the jury selection process, that there are the prosecutor's notes during jury selection. So that was not previously disclosed to the defense. It was not previously handed over.
And those notes say or indicate.
Go ahead, Zaid.
No, I wanted you to fill in that blank. Those notes indicate what?
That the prosecutor was tracking the race of the jurors. so that you would see BW, BW. I think what was argued that before, because this was raised, this claim about discrimination in jury selection was also raised previously by Mumia's attorneys in previous hearings. But here's the difference, that at that time, when it was raised previously, that what was known at that time to Mumia's attorneys, that 8 Black jurors were struck out of the 15 jurors. Now, with the evidence that was discovered in the boxes, we come to find out that there are 2 additional.
We just lost our
8 out of 10 Black, 8 out of, not 8 Black jurors out of the 15. We're talking about 10 Black jurors out of 15 jurors that were struck, that were struck. And not only that, an argument that was made by Mumia's attorneys, by Sam Spital, was that not only were they tracking race, but they were also tracking, I believe this is based on the arguments that I heard in the hearing that day, was also whether they were employed or not. And something that Sam Spital, Mumia's attorney, pointed out was there were Black jurors who were struck, who were either not employed, and that there were similarly situated white jurors who were not struck. But that there is a substantial difference, they're arguing, between 8 Black jurors being struck and now the new information, which is 10 Black jurors were struck out of 15.
So the hearing wasn't just based on, we have boxes of evidence that had stuff in it that could be used at trial. Well, I thought that the hearing was, hey, we could have used this stuff at the trial, not in the appeals, but this stuff could have been used at trial or in the original appeals, right?
This is information that could have been disclosed at any point in time.
That's right.
Whether it was information that was at trial, whether it was in the appeals, whether it was in the Post-Conviction Relief Act petitions. And so this is not information that was disclosed, even though that what the Commonwealth is stating in their letter is that we made representation to the best of our knowledge, and they're stating that on December 28th, a DA and a staff member found these 6 boxes.
So is there, what I'm trying to figure out for the hearing, right? So there's a motion to dismiss. Now,
it's a notice to intent to dismiss.
Is the motion to dismiss, like, is the judge about to dismiss based on a discrimination claim for an appeal, or based on here are some new boxes that, like, is there appeal?
I'm glad you're bringing this up, because what the judge is saying is that it's not a motion to dismiss, because that would be done by either the defense attorney or that would be done by the prosecutor filing motions, which are just requests to the court. The judge is giving them notice. I'm about to dismiss Mumia's petition entirely.
Which
no vacating the verdict, no order of a new trial, no evidentiary hearing, no discussion. I'm giving you notice of this decision. And the reason why the judge is giving notice is that she's giving both sides an opportunity to respond.
To be heard.
Now, so basic, is it really the judge just saying, look, defense lawyers for Mumia, I'm about to hand you an L. I'm gonna give you a chance to say something, but good luck.
That to me was unclear in the hearing. What I heard from the judge at the end of the hearing was, please cite to the trial record. An issue that the judge brought up was that people were making, both sides were making assertions and statements in their pleadings without actually pointing to something within the trial record. So that was the first thing. The second is that she also stated, I am bound Pennsylvania law by the law of the Supreme Court and the law of the Superior Court. In reading quickly the pleadings, and particularly of Mumia's attorneys, they state United States Supreme Court constitutional law, which applies to all states. Of course, the states can provide greater protections than what the federal level does. But from that statement, it looks like what the judge is looking for is responses that are rooted in Pennsylvania state law.
Okay. So to some extent, what she was telling the defense attorneys, it seemed like from what you're saying right now, she was telling the defense attorneys, y'all not really representing them well right now, right? Like it seemed like what she was saying
I think what the judge is saying is that I need Pennsylvania law and I need citations.
So if you want to basically, she was like, if you want to get my verdict, you ain't gonna get it this way, right? What you sent up is not going to get me to vote for you. If you want me to vote for you,
I think it's a bit different. I would say that what the judge is saying in their notice to intent to dismiss is based on the pleadings as they're written. Here's what I'm going to decide. And some of the decisions are that the judge addresses the raising the claim about discrimination in jury selection, that this was something that should have been raised by the defense attorney at trial. Now, the way that the Commonwealth explained the prosecutor's notes was that the defense attorney indicated that I'm going to make this kind of challenge. So that was discussed by the defense attorney, at least for my reading of those pleadings. But then again, Mumia's attorneys, the Commonwealth responded so that what the prosecutor was doing was tracking race for jurors, but not for discrimination, but because there was going to be a potential challenge. Now, Mumia's attorneys raised the issue, well, if the prosecutor was doing that, if they were tracking that because they thought that there was going to be a challenge about the discrimination in jury selection, they wouldn't have done it. The prosecutor Mr. McGill, did it for some of the jurors, not for all of them. And so Mumia's attorneys are arguing if that was the case, then the prosecutor would have tracked it for all of the jurors. And what the judge has indicated is that the defense attorney after jury selection did not raise this issue, and therefore it is waived. Can't raise it again. Also, when the judge is stating in their notice to intent to dismiss that because Mumia and through his attorneys had litigated this issue previously and lost. And then also stated that there was a due diligence, that it was also that the Batson challenge failed because the Mumia's attorneys had an opportunity to cross-examine the prosecutor McGill. I believe it was in the 5th Post-Conviction Relief Act hearing. That they had an opportunity to cross-examine him. He had written an affidavit, and that in the trial record indicated that there was latitude being given to the defense attorney to cross-examine. And that would include cross-examining based on any questions that are related to discrimination in the jury selection process. What Mumia's attorneys argued in court is that the attorneys at that time at the Post-Conviction Relief Act hearing didn't have these notes, did not know about the 2 additional jurors, and how are they to cross-examine on notes that they did not know existed? And that creates a kind of fishing expedition that is expected from Mumia's attorneys when they were cross-examining during the last Post-Conviction Relief Act hearing.
And so how does those the 6 new boxes, right? Is there an independent motion based on not the discrimination hearing, right? Is there one based on a Brady violation, right? Or
There is. That was the argument that Judith Ritter law professor Ed Widener made those arguments about the information that went to the credibility of key witnesses. And
so
that,
is the judge going to rule on that separately?
the judge is not going to rule on that separately. In fact, that the judge included that in her notice of intent to dismiss. And so go ahead, Jonathan. I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
No, I'm just trying to, because it seems like they found a bunch of new. It seems like the discrimination hearing and the Brady violation hearing, as in like here are some brand new boxes. Why were they like why is the new boxes being dismissed? Like I can understand like they're like, hey, this has been litigated before. You had a chance to prove before, but I don't understand why there's potentially exculpatory evidence that was never revealed. They said we did it to the best of our ability, but this evidence was in your possession. I mean, incompetence isn't I mean, the DA's office doesn't get a pass for incompetence, right?
I mean, in terms of the Post-Conviction Relief Act, in terms of the Brady violation, let me look directly into what the judge's arguments as it relates to the Brady violation is that the evidence that was put forward is not material. Again, the standard in the Brady violation is whether the evidence is material is if there is a reasonable probability that had it been disclosed, the outcome of the proceedings would have been different. The judge, in her intent to dismiss, stated that this evidence that was proffered, that Mumia's attorneys are arguing is Brady, is not material.
So they're
there
like,
was not a reasonable probability that had it been disclosed, that the outcome would have been different. That is what the judge stated in the notice to intent to dismiss.
Now, is there a reason for it? Because I mean, the dude's like, "Hey, judge, can you give me some money?" Like, I don't know why that's not like, "Hey, DA, you know that thing I did for you. When am I gonna get paid?" Like when you read the letter seems like I did my part. You're gonna do your part. Do I need to fill something out? What I need to do? So, like, is it? Why would not having that be not an issue? Does the judge tell why?
That is a great question, because that goes to another piece of evidence that was obtained from the 5th Post-Conviction Relief Act hearing. That was the hearing before this one that was in before this past Wednesday. The prosecutor submitted an affidavit for that hearing. And in that affidavit, the prosecutor claims that, you know, the Chaubert letter, that's what it's called, that Chaubert was asking whether he could receive reimbursement for lost wages. That was in the prosecutor McGill's affidavit. And that
is there evidence
lost
of that,
wages because he was testifying. And that all McGill responded to in the letter, this is what he writes in the affidavit, is that he would look into it. And that he didn't have any intention of looking into it. And he says this in his affidavit because he knew that as a policy, the district attorney's office did not compensate witnesses for lost wages. So the judge is bringing in the affidavit of the prosecutor at trial that stated, oh, this was a conversation about lost wages. I said I was going to look into it, had no intention of doing it. It's not our policy to do it. And then states that there's a few reasonable inferences that can come from this. This is what the judge states, which is, you know what? This is a follow-up to a conversation with the prosecutor that, you know, Mr. Chaubert is expecting to hear back from the district attorney about this, but that that what she states in this notice is that what Mumia's attorneys are saying is that, Chaubert doesn't reference a specific dollar amount for lost wages, and that this specifically is some sort of, it's a money payment in exchange for his testimony. That letter, I think essentially what it is that it's unclear how are you going to prove this additional inference that the testimony was provided in exchange for a money payment.
But
I'll talk about what the judge was looking for. The judge is saying, first of all, the prosecutor's affidavit does not reflect that it would support that inference. Second, that the defense counsel represents no successful attempts to discuss this letter with Mr. Chaubert. And again, I'm just laying down what the judge is saying. And that Mumia, through his attorney, presents no other evidence that Chaubert remembers this letter. And there was also not a witness. Mr. Chaubert refused to sign a witness certification. And so I think ultimately what the judge is saying is that, this is an assertion within Mumia's attorney's arguments. And I think that one of the arguments that was made by Mumia's attorneys is that you just can't take the district attorney's inferences.
Right.
This is also something that can be argued within an evidentiary hearing.
Well, because it just seems like what the judge did was in an evidentiary hearing, could this have been, it seems like the defense attorney was like, we could have used this to get more information, and we could have used this to potentially sway jurors on the credibility of a witness, right? This is something that the DA would have had to answer would have to really answer.
I think what the
two witnesses.
I think what the judge is saying about both of the witnesses in the notice to the intent to dismiss, and this is in the headings within the notice, is that had it been submitted, it would not have been material. There would not have been a reasonable probability that that the outcome of the proceedings would have been different. And she makes very specific factual arguments. And I told Zaid that I would take a deep dive into this notice to intent to dismiss that I just received this morning. But there's in terms of the what the judge lays out in this notice. I don't know if I have time for that right now in the radio program, but I'm just giving a broad summary of what the judge's notice states.
And it's interesting because even though we will have to have you back on this, like after you've read this, and because it just seems like, when you hear the evidence, right, and you hear the letter, it seems like the obvious is the obvious, right? Like it seems like, how can you say that it wouldn't have been material when everybody who's here, like reasonable people who hear it, are like, ooh, that needed to be probably examined a little bit more. Ooh, that might have been a thing, right? You don't have to prove that they would have actually been like, we don't convict. It seems like the standard is, could it have reasonably swayed the outcome? And reasonably, it seems like it could have if it went to the credibility of these witnesses, which it could have, right? To say that, that would be like, it seems like they're saying that the prosecutor's story is so airtight that even if it wouldn't have been material because the prosecutor's story was just so perfect, right? Like, yeah, because even the way you're describing what the prosecutor said or the defense is, yeah, he was asking for money for lost wages. I said I'd look into it, but I was lying to him because I never planned on, he was going to be out of it anyway, right? Like, it seems like that's the characterization, right? Like I said, I was going to lie to him. He said he was mad because he lost some money and lost wages. Like at best, right? It seems like at best, what the prosecutor's saying is they lied to the witness and the witness was mad and they were going to dismiss him. and ignore him because, it was all there. I mean, we weren't going to give him anything. But it seems like he had expectation of it, right? But that wouldn't have mattered. It seems like she would have to give 100% strength to what the prosecutor said and indulge zero possibility that it would have been questioned in a different way.
Did she freeze? I think she froze again. But yeah, you're leaning in the right direction, Jonathan. And we can go so much. We can go further than that. The Batson case is a federal case that deals with racial discrimination of jurors, right? And one of the things that came out in the previous appeal hearing is that not only did they discriminate against it, but they had a videotape where they trained prosecutors in how to screen black people off of jurors. They call them man tapes, right? Right. There was another witness that was turned out. Her name was Veronica White. Veronica White came. We had post-conviction hearings before Judge Sabo, the judge who oversaw Mumia's conviction, called the hanging judge of Philadelphia. Right. She came to change her testimony and admit that she had been offered deals. Right. And she was arrested on the stand. Right.
Wait, what happened?
That was for a bounce check or a bad check in Camden, because on the stand when she was trying to recant her testimony for how she was turned in.
Hold on, time out. Wait, stop. You're saying that there was a witness.
I mean, Cynthia White, Robert Sherber, two witnesses. It was Veronica Jones, right?
You're saying there was a witness for Mumia's defense at one of the hearings.
No, she was a witness for the prosecution. Right?
She was a witness for the prosecution, but eventually she was going to testify for the defense.
She had a bout of conscience when she realized that Mumia's, life was on the line, right? And that she participated in a man being sentenced to death. So we went with those first round of post-conviction hearings. They were before Judge Sabo back then. I said, you weren't around back then, right? But then y'all had buses coming down to court to witness that, right? I was in the court.
So a woman who was a witness against Mumia recanted her testimony, and while she was on the stand,
she was arrested. She was arrested. Right?
Wait.
So there's a book about it. There's a whole book about it. She has since passed on, but Veronica Jones was very courageous for daring to do that. And as they were arresting her, she gave that famous retort, "Is that all you got?" She was not going to back off her coming forward with the truth, right? We can go on to the Batson case. ISIS, when you were trying to replug back in, I was also laying out the history of the Batson case in Mumia's case. Now, the Pennsylvania DA's office had a video training tape on how to knock off black jurors. They call it McCann tape, right? McMahon tape, right? And I know we're over time.
Yeah,
we got to have her come back. Right.
We have to.
I just want to make a note that I believe that video, and I'm not sure Zaid, but I think that video was in 1987, and the Batson case, if I'm not mistaken, was decided in 1986.
Right. So
wow.
So I mean, we can go
I just want to provide that timeline.
We really do have to, because some of this stuff is just outrageous and not talked about. You have witnesses. You literally have a witness who was trying to recant her testimony and was arrested on the stand. You have, and in the context of that, right? Like those lawyers need to put that there, because in that context, the person asking for payment, the person who's like, "Hey, I have my misdemeanors disappear." You arrested somebody on the stand who was recanting their testimony. That's part of the court evidence. Literally part of the court evidence. Because the court stenographer had to be writing that down as they were taken off were taken off the stand.
You can't make this stuff
and
up.
They arrested off the stand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. And then before she could give it the chance to finish testifying, she's like, "You have the right to remain silent." What? Wow.
I mean, I was there for. I witnessed that.
Wow, you were in the courtroom when that
happened. I witnessed
Judge Sabo.
Wow. And the judge just was like, yeah.
So I mean, so we could going into Mumia's case had before we even talk about these issues that we raised here a few days ago, had 27 constitutional violations. Not 21. 21. I'm sorry, I said 27, right? And then there's the mishandling of the physical evidence itself. We've got stuff that none of that new evidence around the physical evidence, right? None of that has been allowed to get on any court record in the state of Pennsylvania, right? Wow. And that's one of the most important points that the great Lynn Washington made. Lynn Washington is a Black journalist, profoundly independent Black journalist who's been with Mumia's case since the trial. And he said the question is not just the prosecutors and the police, it is the courts. Right. Courts have been absolutely complicit in seeing to it that Mumia does not get a free, fair trial because they will not let in any of the evidence that will clear him, right? And so I mean, so that's the dragon that we're trying to slay.
Okay. No, I thank you.
So here's what, Jonathan, this is what I want to do. December 2nd, I want to use that as a potential target date to have a follow-up show as we get ready for December 16th. December 16th is a Friday. December 9th, the anniversary of Mumia's incident is a Friday. So I want to see if we can have a follow-up show to tighten this up and to talk about the mobilization efforts we will be doing by December 2nd. December 2nd show.
I was going to say, Zaid and Jonathan, at that point on December 2nd, we'll have the responses from both sides. So 18 days from now, the Mumia's attorneys will respond to the judge's intent to dismiss Mumia's petition, and will also 10 days after that have the Commonwealth's response. So it might be a great place to start with the judge's notice.
Absolutely. We might have you back.
Do a deeper. I know that we don't have time to do a deeper dive right now into what the judge writes about her notice of intent to dismiss.
No, we definitely.
But it might be a great place to start.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and again, if I ever get locked up, I want you to call this young woman right here, right? Make sure she's on my defense team.
I got to get my license in New Jersey first. I'm licensed.
That's
in
right.
Pennsylvania.
You're still in Pennsylvania, right? Yeah. So yeah, we got to get her licensed up, you know. But if they grab me in Philly, grab her.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Very much appreciate having you on. And we'll definitely have you back soon.
Thank you so much.
And before you get off,
thank you.
Before you get off, Isis, before you get off,
you got to ask the question. Yes, I didn't tell you about this part.
Very quickly. Who is your favorite hip hop artist, individual, or group?
Oh, see, I can't. You're making this really hard.
Could be anybody.
You know, I love my KRS-One, Public Enemy, Channel Live. I mean, you're pulling me in all sorts of different directions. Big L, Biggie. I mean, I could go.
When you're getting ready to fight, who you listening to?
Right, exactly.
Who was I just listening to on my walk over?
No, I said when you get ready to fight, who you listening to?
KRS-One.
All right.
All right, that sounds great. So thank you so much. We will see you soon. And good having you on. We'll have you back soon.
Peace and blessings.
Thank you. You knocked it out of the park. Appreciate you.
Hey, so we have our, Nork's ambassador to hip hop on, Hakim Green. How are you, man? We appreciate you a lot.
Thank you. Likewise.
We know DJ Rhino is going to be jumping on soon.
All right.
As well.
I'm glad I hopped in while you guys were talking about Mumia, because we put out
lay out the hip hop on Mumia. Come on.
Free Mumia. We put that out in 1996.
That's right.
So we was
That need to go on the All Politics of Local page tonight.
Free Mumia, KRS-One featuring Channel Live. Rest in peace, Reverend Calvin Butts.
Yeah.
Yes, we could actually, that would be a great place to start, man.
Yeah.
That would be a great place to start. Hakim Green. So what I know that sometimes we talk about C. Dolores Tucker, and we talk about that many people say she was right about her criticism of hip hop in the day, and the destructive nature of it. I believe Calvin Butts also weighed in in that time, during that time. And I think, did he have a steamroller? Did he do the steamroller?
Mm-hmm.
A little steamroller over the
forgot
records?
about that.
Yeah.
He did a little steamroller over the records, right?
Yeah.
And I know we've talked about, how, after a while, right? Like C. Dolores Tucker took a lot of heat. Rest in peace. But many people are like, C. Dolores Tucker, after many years, you were right.
She was actually given a lot of heat. That's if we want to be clear about it. She was given a lot of heat.
Right. She was given a lot of heat, of heat over that. But it turned out many people eventually believed that she was correct. And I know that Calvin Butts was also, I believe they might even be working together at that time. But I seem to remember a little steamroller and some records. Calvin Butts rolling over those.
Record. Yeah, that's right. That was
cool. Well, not so much that she was, right or wrong. It's more about the way it was executed, and given Mumia Abu Jamal, given Bashir Hamid, given the plethora of individuals who are serving time, exiled, murdered by police. We thought that our social, economic, political elite could have been targeting more nefarious than rappers. Yes, content, profanity, degrading of Black people. Yes, we understand that. We get that. But let's look at funding in schools, and let's look at employment and job creation, and we just the upper echelon of Black leadership, quote unquote. It's like you coming down here to have this battle that's down here when the fight is really here. So that's why if you look at the hook, Warner, Electra, Atlantic equals WEA. Instead of fighting them, why don't you go free Mumia? This is more, a bigger fight, a more important fight we should be waging.
Yeah, bigger fish to fry, we used to say back in the day.
Fry. Thank you. Bigger fish to fry. Easy to go after some rappers. Much harder to go after local law enforcement, state law enforcement agencies, the court systems that are hemming Black people up, people who are systemically ruining our lives. So
now when you look at Calvin Butts, he did all of it, right? Like Calvin Butts was consistently on all of these issues, and C. Dolores Tucker, to her credit, had a lot of. She was an activist. She was a longtime activist in a lot of different things. She has been working on a lot of different issues, right?
Yeah, like very real stature in the history of our struggle. She sure did.
Right. Like it wasn't like that was the first issue she worked on. She was already head of, I think it was the Congress of African American Women, or it was she was already the leader of an organization that had been doing work for years. And like Calvin Butts, involved in many different
National
things.
Congress of Negro Women, founded by Mary McLeod Bethune.
Right, by a classic Black organization, right? Yeah. And as Calvin Butts, head of Abyssinian Baptist Church, and just bring it back to Calvin Butts. Just what do you think about just from that hip hop perspective, his take on that? Back in the 90s?
There's definitely something to be said about, our responsibility with content and the images that we portray. I'm a big proponent of putting out the right images, or just having some context to the images we put out, just being responsible with how we present ourselves as Black people. So I definitely, I'm not against that. But at the same time, if we create the mechanisms to, we create the platform, we get to control the platform. And, our elite spend a lot of time focusing on what outsiders are doing, as opposed to creating systems that benefit our people that we control. We're always looking at what they're doing to us and not looking at how we participate, not looking at how we can replace these channels that we don't like with channels we do like, because we control it. We know we're getting a fair shake because it's ours. So yeah, like I think using that to kind of lead crossover to the Kanye conversation is kind of the same thing. We spend so much energy focused on what they're doing to us, and we don't focus on what we could be doing for ourselves.
Fair enough, right? Like, and I guess that's probably a good segue, right? Like, I mean, it's been in the headlines so much. I mean, everyone has their opinion on it, whether it should be talked about, whether it should not be talked about, right? Like, personally, I love Kanye's music, right? I'm a big, I think, musical genius. I never worry about the content of someone's like personality when I look at their music, simply because it comes. I'm an educator who teaches a lot of stuff, right? Some of the stuff I teach, like I teach the Declaration of Independence to certain classes every year. And I teach the Declaration of Independence, which was written by a slaveholder who like raped a 12-year-old girl, right? And so, and continuously for years, right? Had many kids with him, right? So that's Thomas Jefferson, in case people didn't know. And so I teach documents. I look at works of art and works of literature. I don't really get into people's personality and what they do. If they make something that's art, I look at the art. I don't really care about the personality of the artist, but that comes from my background, and I'm just consistent, right? Like that I teach John Locke, who wrote all men are created equal and endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, and property. Right? He wrote that 80 years before the Declaration of Independence. So I mean, I'm teaching, philosophy by people who are like racists, slavers. I've taught Immanuel Kant, who believed that black people were inferior, and had a whole section of a book talking about the shape of black people's heads and how we were dumb. And so, I mean, when people are like, "Oh, don't listen to his work," I'm like, this goes against everything that we do in academia, because if we really cared about what people really believe, then
I haven't heard anybody say don't listen to him.
Oh, I heard a lot of people there are major editorials that came out where people
don't listen to his music.
That they stopped listening to his music. They no longer listen to his music. They this one Washington Post reporter was like, a cultural critic, right? Was like, on his radio broadcast or his podcast, they used to use Kanye, and they stopped using him because of that. And the only person I ever had that with, the only artist that I stopped listening to what they do because of what they did was R. Kelly, and that's only because his songs are rooted in, like, you can't really listen to his lyrics, right? She might be young, but she ready. Like, what? No, I can't listen to that, right? Like, no, right? Like, he's writing about it, right? He's a Pied Piper. Like, come on, man. I can't, like, this is not just a love song. You call yourself that Chocolate Factory. Who is he? Willy Wonka? Man, nah. R. Kelly is the only one, and that's because his music is so rooted. Like, it's almost like he was playing people, right, in his music, and he had titles that went with child molestation if you really thought about it. And I can't listen to it without feeling dirty, right? Like, I feel like somebody peed on some young person if I'm listening to an R. Kelly song, right? But R. Kelly is the exception, and that's because the content of what he did, the content of what he sang about, is like he was playing the world in what he was doing at the same time. Where everybody else is like, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. I mean, that's a good document, Declaration of Independence.
Right. But to lock in on Kanye, like, what we can't separate, right, is that he's politically aligned himself with people who want to exterminate us. Charlottesville was a real thing. Like, that really happened. And when he went MAGA hat, he went Confederate jacket, he went White Lives Matter, he's explaining away the murder of George Floyd, he's in partnership with Candace Owens, he bought Parler. Like, his political interest, much of his financial interest is in empowering people who want to do harm to us,
right,
who are actively working the system to our demise. And Kanye is looking to explain it away and in direct attention to another group of people as the problem. I'm not saying he's intentionally doing this, but the effect of what he does, again, with the conspiracy theory community, and many of our people who are wrapped up in the conspiracy theory community, promulgated by the right wing racists who want us to walk away from our empowerment. Like the whole goal, in my opinion, of the conspiracy theory community is to get you to opt out of your empowerment. So if you don't vote because there's this grand conspiracy of global elite Jews who want to and these Democrats are run by Jews and they don't have your best interest, they're just looking to use you for your vote, and then that's going to make you pause at the polls, not go to the polls, while they occupy the positions we abdicate because of our debate over whether Kanye is right or wrong or whatever. So when you have a group of people who are unified, organized, have collective interests, identify that this person is empowering people who want to exterminate us because they say it out their mouth, not because we're making this up. It's some great. No, they
will not replace us.
They're out there. They about that work for real.
Right.
They're going to organize to shut up the mouthpiece, and I can't be mad at them. I wish we had the same. If we exerted the same power, because we do have the same power.
Right.
We just don't understand our value. We're unorganized. We're not on code. We're not focused. We don't know what's in the best interest of the collective. So we work as individuals, and we connect ourselves to, individual personalities, that messianic complex that Black people have, where we're waiting for the one person who seems to have all the answers. And then that person is controlled, got a hand up their behind, it's used for
knocked off and locked up.
Right. Or knocked off and locked up. Yeah, exactly. Like we can't separate this from the political ramifications that he's entrenched himself in. He wore the MAGA hat. He endorsed Trump. He put out the t-shirt this last month, White Lives Matter. He denounces Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, like I'm just saying, like with me, I'm like Kanye. Kanye outside of music stopped existing for me in 2006 when he's like George Bush hates Black people and everybody loved him, right? Like he was just that moment he captured, right? Like I mean, I don't even hate George Bush, right? Like I didn't like him. Like as a president, but I mean, like what he did though, what he didn't do during Katrina was just disgusting. So when Kanye's like George Bush hates Black people, everybody was mad, feeling it at that moment. I'm like, yes. And Kanye, in terms of things that he said about life and the world after that, just didn't matter. as in I would not listen. As in I'm like, oh my God, I think the thing that disturbs me about Kanye, about the situation, right, is how many Black people take him seriously. Like as in think that he's some genius. He's just like, no, he's probably mentally disturbed by this time, right? Like
there it is.
Well, he told us
Kanye has not been right since his mother died.
He told us he was.
Right. He says I'm bipolar, right?
And he's on medication.
He has not been right. The death of his mother was the AC and DC or the AC and B. He has not been right since the loss of his mother.
Yeah.
And he has never gotten the help that he needs.
I think I'm going to go out on a limb and said he wasn't right even before that.
Probably not.
Right. There's a lot of people in our community. I go through my issues. A lot of us are walking around with mental issues, yo. We have depression. We've been traumatized, oppressed, depressed, suppressed, hunger, not knowing where the next meal's coming from, ducking the bullies on the street, like all that leads you to a feeling of fight or flight. And when you're not supposed to be stuck in between fight or flight. And we live our lives in between. So we enter situations without clarity of thought, without, so and I know Kanye personally. He said some things to me
Well, there you go.
personally.
That would we need to hear that part.
Oh, come on, bro. Come on. Let's not I know, some of his really close friends who grew up with him, who were there with him through the successes, through the whole career, up until and past the Kardashian situation. I got friends that was there at Saturday Night Live when he had the MAGA hat on, and they tried to get him to take it off, and he wouldn't, and they left him. And he ain't there. And when you have when you're not all the way there, that opens you up to be used and manipulated and misinformed. And
so I got a question for you, Hakim. Right?
A lot of that going around
about that, right? Like, because you're Norca's ambassador to hip hop. You hang out with people, people, right? Like, so in your estimation, like, he hasn't been there for a while. Like, he is literally a billionaire that is being exploited by the people who are around him. And is that a fair character? Would that be your characterization as someone who's talked to Kanye West personally and talked to many people?
I'm gonna give you some instances. So I first met Kanye like 97, 98. And I met him through Carl Thomas, Malik Youssef, John, who was his manager at the time. And then, he knew who I was because of Channel Live, always had great respect, always showed great respect. So we hung out during that time, quiet. And then, he blows up, he does his thing. I see him. I gave him a book. He was at the Brooklyn Bodega, Brooklyn Hip Hop Festival with Q-Tip. He's got the Maybach parked right on the side of the stage, so he can get off stage and run right to the Maybach. It's jam-packed. There's people everywhere, cameras. It's just... So I'm behind the ropes, behind the gate, and he gets off stage, and I go, yay, yay. He hears my voice, he sees me, and then he walks directly to me. So I had a book that my friend wrote called The God Genes Decoded, which shows how the different deities throughout religion all trace back to ancient Kemet, and the ancient deities of Kemet were actually the elements oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, like all these different. This book is incredible, by the way, incredible. So I gave him I give him the book, and he just looks at me crazy, and he just gets in the Maybach. He drives off. Okay. The next time I see him,
I remember you tell this story. I haven't heard it in a while. Go ahead.
Yeah, the next time I see him, we're doing the literacy campaign with Do It All, the 211 Community Impact. Reading is for Life. I'm out at South by Southwest getting drops and PSAs from the various artists that I run into. Running to Kanye, yo, yay, oh, hot, what up? Yo, I'm doing this literacy program out in Newark. We try to get these young people to read, and I need you to do a drop. Hakim, I'm a notorious non-reader. You don't read checks. You don't read contracts. You don't read bank statements. You don't read the room. You stupid. All right, I'll do it. And he gives it to me. But I say that to say, so why would you tell anybody that you're like, when you're trying to promote literacy amongst our young people, why would you proudly admit that you don't read?
Now, so that's something he said a lot, right? Like, because that's that when he said famously that he didn't read, everyone was like, your mother was a school teacher. Stop lying. You are clearly very literate in what you've done in your early life, right? Like those lyrics are by a reader, like his interviews, he's a reader, right? Like is there so you're saying he's like, nah.
No, I don't think he's a reader. I think he's a conversationalist. So he picks up a lot of concepts and ideas from other people, and then he regurgitates it without having a real foundation as to what's being said. Which is why he's in this this conundrum right now, is because he's speaking on things he really doesn't have any foundational information to support. He's just regurgitating what he thinks he means. He doesn't really know. And to put yourself in that position, to me, is a sign of mental illness. Like, sometimes you just gotta know when to shut up. You gotta know how to fall back, and to assume that your opinion or something merits listening to. You're like, that's narcissistic. That's you think that for some reason you're special and you can just expound on anything, and we're supposed to take you serious. Like, you know, when you walk in certain rooms, you close your mouth until you're asked to speak. And then you should speak on things that you know, especially when you're Kanye West, the billionaire, the mega superstar, and you know you have that level of influence. So
let me add another speculation, because this is purely anecdotal and without evidence. The other aspect of, I mean, think about this. Who else brags about being a non-reader?
Right.
Who else? Say the name.
Oh, DT.
Donald Trump.
Right.
Donald Trump.
That's right.
And Kanye is closely allied to Trump. It's not just, you know, a casual acquaintance. These guys are friends.
Right.
Bosom buddies. Do you see how Trump shakes Kanye's hand? He don't give him the white man shake. He give him the
Obama hug.
He give
ballroom shake.
The semi-black power kind of shake. You know what I'm talking about, Hakim? They don't just shake like the regular handshake like this. They make at least two moves.
They go, yeah, I got you.
You know,
they bring it on in.
That's right. That's right. And then they hug. You know, this is not how acquaintances greet each other. People who are trying to check each other out. You know, this is a symbol of a close bond. So Trump openly identifies himself as a non-reader, and this is verified by all the people that work for him in the White House.
Yeah, true.
This is not a speculation. All of those closest advisors and cabinet members, he was notorious in this regard. And I think there's a deep, actually, I believe Kanye does read, as you were saying, but I think that it's a cultural badge of pride or courage to say something like, I'm a non-reader. Why? Because we live in an anti-intellectual culture. American culture is historically anti-intellectual. You don't want to be identified as a pinhead or a liberal intellectual or you know, a crazy bald head, et cetera, et cetera. You know, and I think that in certain circles, maybe not so much in circles, but in terms of building a persona for mass appeal, especially to certain demographics, that to say, you know, to identify yourself as a non-reader is to say you're non-intellectual. I think this is something that can be examined. I mean, I've never heard Herschel Walker say that he wasn't a non-reader, but I did think I heard him say a week or so ago that he wasn't an intellectual like Senator Warnock. He was comparing himself to Senator Warnock. You know, this is signaling. This is a form of virtue signaling.
Yes.
You're identifying with the virtues of whatever part of the population you're trying to appeal to.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, and I think this whole thing, I'm not a reader, when in fact he probably does read. I mean, he may not read like he's in a doctoral program or maybe even in college, but I'm sure he reads. But I think it's important that in that persona he's trying to appeal to, that he identifies himself as an anti-intellectual. And you know, Hakim brilliantly talked about how Kanye is a grown-ass man. He's not a kid. I mean, we talk to him like he done just broke through, like he's the Kanye that Hakim knew in 1998. It's 30 years. It's 30. In fact, it's 34 years since 1998. His kids is big. This is a grown man. And he has openly allied himself with the fascists in this country.
Right.
You know, it's an open alliance. This is not like somebody tricked me into doing this or they want me. He knows what he's. You know, some people talk like Kanye don't know what he's doing. I disagree. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. Right. And I think it's in tune with some people that are around him, and it might be out of tune with some people around him. But to deny him agency just because, you know, we might think, and rightly so, maybe, that he is mentally challenged, does not exculpate him of his agency in these. I mean, and think about it. He always does this at a particular time. Kanye visits the White House just before the primary.
Right.
Kanye puts on the White Lives Matter t-shirt just before the general election.
Right.
Kanye attacks the Jews just before the general election, and Jews are an important part of the Democratic Party demographic. You know, these things don't happen like happenstance. They always appear to happen at a strategically important moment.
Right.
And I don't think this is an accident. I don't think he stumbles into these things. You know, I think it's part of his overall. I think what he miscalculated was what the response would be. I mean, he baited Adidas. He said, I can say whatever I want, and
they can't.
Will not
do anything about
it. He said they can't.
That.
He said they won't. He
said they can't. And I think that's what moved him, because everybody was asking, well, what is Adidas going to do? Because 5 or 6 of the other big players had already cut Kanye loose. The bank had cut Kanye loose, and on and on and on. People were saying, well, what is Adidas going to do? And Adidas couldn't be left out hanging out there, because remember, Adidas was a company that aided the Nazi regime. Adidas didn't just come into existence. Adidas was in existence in the 30s and 40s. It's Adidas who designed the uniforms for the Nazi army and the SS.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Like many people don't know.
Like coming in with mic droppers in the hip hop section. Look out.
Mercedes-Benz and BMW manufactured the vehicles for the army, for the German army. That's how they was making their big money. They backed Hitler because they knew that Hitler would put Germany on a military economy. And so people think BMW is a nice car, Mercedes, but they don't know that Volkswagen. Hitler formed the Volkswagen Company. The Volkswagen Company is a state-formed operation. Volkswagen means people's wagon, people's car. That's what it means. Hitler said there needed to be a car that the average German worker could afford to buy, because even then, the average German worker couldn't buy the BMW or the Mercedes that they were on the assembly line making. So Volkswagen was state sponsored, right? All of these, even Toyota, and what's the other one? Not Hyundai. What's the other one? Begins with H, the Japanese company. These were companies that existed before World War II,
Honda.
and these Honda and Toyota. These are families in Japan that owned industries and manufactured the vehicles for the Japanese army. So these companies,
Wow. So
I want to add something to what you were saying about especially Volkswagen.
Right.
Just to bring it home. When you look at the shape of the Volkswagen vehicle, especially the Volkswagen Bug,
right,
the bubble shape,
right,
they were designed like that to mimic the Nazi helmets, the Nazi soldiers.
That's right.
And
that's right.
Great. We want to see a army of vehicles, an army of cars on the road to remind them of the Nazi troops.
It was the militarization of German society. So Adidas couldn't be out there hanging too long because people gonna say, well, is Adidas anti-Semitic? Have they not broken with their
with their
anti-Semitic
history and their founders? Like
That's right.
I did not know that Adidas founders were Nazis.
That's right.
Like I didn't know it until today, till just
Shit.
now. I know that just now that not like I knew about Volkswagen,
Listen.
I knew about Mercedes. I didn't know the Rockin' My Adidas founded by Nazis.
Yeah,
That's right.
You know about Ford. You know about Ford.
Go ahead.
I know about Henry Ford. Henry Ford being a
Ford
Nazi.
and his fascination with the Nazis and
right.
You know, a lot of what the Nazis did was, you know, studying Ford and how he did things and how to
automate. Right.
The concentration camps were actually like U.S. funded franchises.
Right.
It was franchised out by the U.S. banks.
We haven't heard from DJ Rhino. I just want to bring DJ Rhino into this conversation. Yo, DJ, man, like, what's going on? Talk to me.
What's happening?
Hey, man, I know you normally don't comment on this stuff, right? Normally you're like, I comment on the music. That's it. I just do the music. It's the music. Nah, don't ask me about personalities. It's the music. Talk to me, man.
That T-shirt is fire, though, by the way.
Thank you, bro.
Wow, it is nice.
As a matter of fact, Rhino, if you're selling them, I'm buying them. That's nice.
Right. I still got a couple of 2X's left. I got to get another batch made, but I still got a couple of 2X's left if anybody wants.
I need a nice medium.
Word. But I mean, we were talking about Kanye. You were talking about how I know John earlier. You were talking about whether people still listening to his music and content and this, that, and the other. For me, I look at it like this. In hip hop, hip hop always had a certain level of braggadocious, right? You always had a certain level of, I'm this, I'm that, and I got this or I can do that. So that's you can say that that's a certain level. We had a certain threshold of narcissism that we accepted and dealt with. You know what I'm saying? I think for me personally, when Kanye broke through that threshold and the narcissism went out of control, that's when I kind of pulled back. I know artistically, lyrically, that's when I started pulling back from Kanye because I can't get into too much of that. You know what I'm saying? Musically, things, I was into his first 3 albums. I think things changed. Even musically, after his mother passed, musically, I heard a difference. There was the narcissism as well, but just musically, production-wise, things even changed in Kanye to me. So I pulled back early. That was before the MAGA hat and all of that. But now you want to talk about red flags? I mean, there were plenty. I mean, the MAGA hat was one. I mean, linking up with Donald Trump, there was a whole lot of stuff that was going on with Kanye that was just red flags. And people make a big, stink about what he was saying on Drink Champs, talking about, certain people. And my thing is, Kanye really hasn't said anything that so many other people have said when it comes down to that. I mean, we heard plenty of rappers. We heard say it in their lyrics. We heard actors say it in their interviews. We heard activists say it all the time. We've heard the ministers within the nation constantly say it. You know what I'm saying? So he hasn't said nothing new, and he never says anything that we don't already know. Like even the George Bush thing, we knew already about George Bush and what he felt about black people. We knew this already. We know all of this stuff already. He's not saying anything new, and people act like, oh yeah, Kanye's calling them out. He's calling people out. He's shooting shots. I'm like, he ain't said nothing we don't already know. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand. And then the whole genius. He's nowhere near a Jesus, a Michael Jackson, or Albert Einstein, man. People got to stop, man, and really like read up on those names and do the history on those people and who they are. You know what I'm saying? And recheck that, man. I mean, we just putting too much attention. Like he's a distraction. We're putting too much attention on this dude. He needs help. He needs real help. He needs real help from somebody, from a real true loved one. I don't know how many of those are around left for him. You know what I'm saying? But he needs a true loved one to step in and intervene on something real, man, because he's got a bunch of yes men. He's already out of control. He's hard-headed. He's not going to listen to anybody now at this point. You know what I mean? I mean, you got to turn him off, man. Just turn him off. You know what I'm saying? That's just where I'm at with it. That's where I'm at with it with Kanye. I'm you know, like I said, you know, musically I pulled back early, and there was a whole lot of red flags for me to just step back off that dude. Man.
Yeah, like as I said before, man, like I'm like I don't really. I think that everything he stands for after 2006, in bad, right? Like I think everything he's done since 2015 just out of this world crazy, and I can't, everything that he does non-musically, not there for it at all.
And there's a whole movement of people out there that support him, and they're trying to, trying
that's
to
what I don't
make
understand,
excuses
man. I'm
and
like,
trying to explain the portions of Kanye that we're supposed to understand and we don't get. And I mean,
I'm like, stop.
Yeah,
stop,
man. Like, it doesn't
man.
make sense, man.
Just go
When
back.
there's
Like,
that much complexity about somebody, step back, man. You don't want to be involved. That's that's like meeting somebody like that on the street. When you young and you boys and y'all out, you meet somebody like that on the street, you're like, nah, I ain't dealing with this dude. He kind of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
you got to know your
anybody who's trying to
circles,
explain Kanye, I'm like, a mind is a terrible thing to have developed, right? It's like the same people who are like, the COVID vaccine and the 5G and the wires, right? Like it gets like stop. Just actually read an actual book that's written by somebody credible if you want to do that. But Kanye is not your man, right? Like if you're like, yo, he's still producing good albums. He produced the album by Nas. He produced the album by Pusha T. His production is still on point, right? He's made some of the best albums that they made in years in the last few years, right? Like, so it's funny. I was talking to Chris Randall, and Randall was like, "Yo, Kanye, he shut up. He's not saying anything, right? Like this is like a month ago. He's like, Kanye's not saying anything. He's making his money. He's quiet now, right? He's just people have told him to shut up, and he's shutting up, right? And not 3 days later, he starts talking crazy, and I'm like, oh, well, I thought your man. What's up with your mans?
Now my thing is this: I feel like the strategic thing would be now, boom, you in your millions, yeah, get quiet, make your moves, do what you got to do. He should have broke away. He should have broke away with Adidas anyway before even making any announcements to have them cut him off. He should have broke away with them anyway, because if you're trying to be the next Adidas or the next Nike, you don't get down with Adidas. You start your own. You know what I'm saying? Just like how Tyler Perry started his own Hollywood. You know what I'm saying? Start your own. You got billions, man. You create your own from scratch if you need to. You know what I'm saying? Don't get down with these people because they're going to act funny if whatever you do or say. You know what I'm saying? And Kanye just talks too much. You just should have shut up, make your moves, get things up and running, and then call people out and shoot your shots. You know what I'm saying? But he screwed all of that up, and he's not crazy, but he's making himself look crazy to everybody.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But we know he's not. But he's just, and this is the narrative that everybody's going to play too. It's like, they treating him crazy. He's crazy. So I don't know, man.
Well,
I think he's crazy though. I don't think he's.
He's got issues. He's definitely got issues that need to be addressed.
Right. Well, I'm sure Elon Musk has as many issues as Kanye.
Probably. Right. Right.
But it's like, just think, if Kanye hadn't made this recent trove of comments, he'd still be a billionaire. He's still a millionaire. He's still, after the break with Adidas, he's still got 400 million. That's what they say in the newspaper. So he ain't gonna miss no meals. And there's also the consideration that you just can't break a contract.
Right.
You can break a contract, but there are ramifications. Now, if Kanye got good lawyers, they're gonna go after Adidas. They're gonna make Adidas gonna have to pay something, for breaking a contract. I bet you, I would bet money. Now, a lot of people have said, well, these big companies, when they issue these contracts, they always have these exculpatory clauses that allow them to get out the contract. But I know people who've had those same kind of contracts. And if their case is strong enough, they get paid. Now, they may not get what their contract was going to give them, but they do get paid. There has to be.
I think.
Go ahead.
That's going to be hard, because if you're a liability if you're just a liability, you're a liability. And Kanye right now is just a liability because
ability now.
No one's gonna want to do business with you if you keep him on.
Right.
So, you're gonna, I don't think you should be forced to, go belly up because you tied yourself to somebody that no one else is gonna deal with.
Right.
So I don't know. It's gonna be a weird thing. But I definitely like what Rhino said about lining your ducks up in a row. If he was really about it, you would line your ducks up in a row, so you wouldn't be running to Skechers the next day.
Right. Yeah, and that's
and get thrown out.
Right, but that's
not that he just ran; he got escorted out.
Yeah, but that's why I think that he's there are levels of him that clearly are not all there. He's being exploited by people who are around him, who are making a lot of money off of him, and and he'll be making sneakers for the alt-right now, right?
Well, Elon Musk gave him his Twitter account back. Yeah. Did you hear that?
I saw that, yeah.
Elon Musk gave him his Twitter account back.
I'm thinking about leaving Twitter because of that fool.
Yeah, me too. I'm thinking about disabling my account, man, because I don't trust Elon Musk at all.
No, he's a dangerous fellow.
Yeah.
He's very dangerous.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, Hakim, I used to go to the movies, I always liked the James Bond movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Y'all remember like Goldfinger and Dr. No? And I used to wonder to myself, how could an individual person have so much power? Do you remember that scene in I think it was Dr. No, where Dr. No is speaking to the United Nations? He's giving the whole world a damn ultimatum. I was like, how could that be possible? And then I thought, well, this is just a story. This is fiction. But we're coming close to a point where there are individuals who have more wealth than the GDP of half the countries of the earth.
Yeah.
I mean, you get a firm like, it used to be called BlackRock. I don't know what it's called now. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Right.
The private army.
Yep.
I mean, people have private armies. They have an army, and they could go into a country. A privately owned army could go into a country and challenge that country's army, and maybe even overthrow it.
Right.
And that's where Elon Musk is, and a few other people. They have that much wealth.
And you're right in that, that goes, and I know we're out of time right now, but it really does go into really the bottom line in all this, right? There are people who have so much money, and so that they actually have the power to change nations, like fund insurrections, like you have people who have
elections,
more
Koch brothers
in nation states, right? And at the point, and Kanye becomes a real interesting oddity in that he was a billionaire he's a black billionaire who aligned himself with white nationalists. And I will never be able to put my head around that, right? And which is why I'm like, Kanye for me exists in 2006. His music is still cool, but 2006, he still makes some good productions. I like Nas's album. I like Pusha T's album, but like, come on, man. This is one of those things where I just can't put my head around. You have more money than certain nation states, and you align yourself with white nationalists. For me, it's generous to think that he's not all there, right?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
With all this money and anti-establishment, how come he doesn't invest in the Nation of Islam?
Oh, I mean,
how come he doesn't finance the Final Call?
He likes Trump. He likes the
There's
white
a lot of things he could invest in.
Does he like Trump more than he dislikes the Jews?
Wow. I don't know what he likes or dislikes. I just know he likes white nationalists. He's down with white supremacy. He's like, he hates black people. He hates black people more than he said George Bush did. But, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, yo, your mama would beat your ass.
Well,
like for real. Like she would come back and beat you.
But you know how, like when black celebrities get to a certain level, right? Nobody's where Kanye is, but you know, when you get to a certain level, the black community expects no accountability to the black community at all.
Right.
Like there's no, where's the building? Where's the churches? I mean, not churches, excuse me, got nothing. Where's the hospitals? Where's the markets?
Right.
Where's the credit unions?
And it's kind of like Kanye's mind went the way of Michael Jackson's face. Right? Like it's like they're more power, more like celebrities reach another level, right? And whenever I hear about Kanye and Kanye's mind, I've been thinking like, yo, Kanye's mind right now, when you see whatever's mine, I just see Michael's face. You know, like,
and I want to say MJ was actually about it toward the
right,
end.
Right. That's why I said his face, right? Because at the end, Michael was talking about owning people's stuff and taking stuff from the Beatles, and like his mind, Michael's mind was right toward the end.
Richard is publishing back.
He might have had some
publishing back.
Yeah. Michael's on his, man.
But he might have some image issues with his own personal selfish image. Like, we know that child not your. I'm sorry, I can't say that. But I mean, you know, Blanket grows up. I'm an African American woman. I'm like, yo, she is. I don't want to tell her. No one wants to say it, right? You know, you're an African American woman. No one wants to say it, right? Because it's mean to say it. So no one's gonna say it. Little African American girl who's just passing, who could pass as white, but you know, she African American. She just mixed. But I know we are running out of time.
Woo! You're going over time with mentions today, Jonathan.
I'm going over time with my own self, right? But man, we have to thank our guests. We thank the disciples for coming on. We appreciate having them on this week all the time. We definitely appreciate at 7:00 the roundup with Mumia and the updates with Mumia's case, and just, you know, some of the things that I learned something new outrageous about the Mumia case every time we do it, right? Like the fact that the witness was exculpatory.
So much to be outrageous about.
It's like, I'm going to recant what I said in this hearing because I feel bad about lying before. And here's the pressure the prosecutor. But while she's testifying, you in the courtroom, while she's testifying, the police arrest her because she's changing her testimony. Yep. And that's okay. And nothing, right. So we thank our guests for being on there. And you know, and I'm glad we spent a whole hour on DJ Rhino and the State of Hip Hop, or at least, you know, 45 minutes on DJ Rhino and State of Hip Hop. And Hakim, always love having you on, brother. Like, you are really Newark's ambassador to hip hop. I appreciated those stories, like, because we all talking about Kanye, and you were like, I met him. Yeah, we met each other a few times, right? And you know, I got some stories.
Trying to be easy,
right? I ain't speculating, right? I ain't speculating. I ain't reading nothing in the bag. You know, no, I talked to him. He funds some of the stuff we do sometimes, right? When he's claiming he don't like to read, I'm like, come on, you can write a check, right? You know?
Right. So on the new Aubrey album that's out right now, available on all streaming platforms, you can get it from my website, HakimGreen.com. I have a song. I'm not gonna say the name of the song because it's a little risque, but it's number 5 on the album. It features Malik Youssef, who's one of Kanye's ghostwriters.
Okay.
Best friends, and he was one of the folks with Ye at SNL when he had the MAGA hat on. He said his friends left him because he wouldn't take off the hat. Malik was one of those folks. So in the verse on the album, he's referencing Kanye. I'll write that. I want you guys to hear it. So that's number 5. I'm not gonna see the name because it's the N-word anometry.
Okay. right.
It's a new science. It's a new science.
Right.
Mathematics, upside down way of
It's
thinking.
a new science.
Okay.
Right? So, yeah, I want y'all to check it out. The upside down way of thinking.
All right.
Big shout out.
All right. I appreciate that. Appreciate that.
Kill it.
And good night. And DJ Rhino. And any final words? Any final words?
Tomorrow we're gonna be on Twitch. Actually, there's gonna be a special raid tomorrow on Twitch. We're starting with our own Max Jerome NJ. So if you go to twitch.tv/Max Jerome NJ at 2 p.m. he starts off, and then it'll go right into me at 3 p.m. Then Malik Mania is gonna be on there right after me at 4. And then our train's gonna close it out at 5 p.m. So it's all happening tomorrow, starting at 2 p.m. on twitch.tv.
Right, that's a new time. You said 2 p.m., right?
Yeah, just because it's a raid, because I'm still coming on at 3, but it starts off as a raid, so they're all like linked in. All the sets are linked in, so you start off with Max Jerome, and it goes right into me, and then right into Malik, and then right into Train.
Oh, nice.
Right.
All right, thanks. You best DJ in the universe, man. And I will talk to you later. We'll see you next week. And everyone, be careful, be safe. Have a good week. Enjoy yourself, and we'll see you next Friday.
Peace.